Chapter 1450, Universe God Mo Yen. Chapter 1450, Universe God Mo Yen. After Jian Wushuang had made up his mind, he immediately found a space and sat down while his gaze fixed on the 9 lofty sword mountains in front of him. Every one of the 9 sword mountains contained boundless sword intention, and all 9 of them were different. Jian Wushuang could feel every single one of the sword intentions. After a while, Jian Wushuang chose one of the sword mountains. The sword mountain contained an extremely swift and fierce sword intention that seemed to be able to tear the universe. It was extremely similar to Jian Wushuang's sword intention. According to Jian Wushuang's understanding towards the sword aimed to kill, and it originally contained boundless spearheads. Only a rusty sword would lose its swiftness. Jian Wushuang started to comprehend in silence and feel the sword intention of the sword mountain. Along with the comprehension, his understanding towards the sword principle and sword intention continuously increased. The time slowly passed. Sky Sword Mountain had strict rules that no one dared to break. Jian Wushuang stayed silent as he comprehended. No one came to interrupt him either. In the blink of an eye, it had been 70 years. Jian Wushuang already stood up from the ground. Then, he held Blood Mountain Sword with his eyes still closed, but Blood Mountain Sword started to be wielded slowly. Whistle! A ray of sword light suddenly flashed. The sword light was like a frightened swan. It suddenly swept past. However, at the instant when the sword light pierced through, an extremely terrifying fierce aura suddenly erupted. A terrifying stroke. The stroke even attracted many cultivators' attention. Rank 3 strongest unique skill. The sword principle is so swift and fierce. Such swift and fierce stroke carries a power that can't be blocked. I definitely couldn't withstand that stroke. The cultivators complimented in silence. There were many sword principle cultivators, but there weren't many who had reached the level of peak universe god in the 3rd heaven. One who could create a rank 3 strongest unique skill was even more scarce. Hence, the sword principle that Jian Wushuang performed received their compliments. After Jian Wushuang had performed his sword principle, he immediately stored his sword and slowly opened his eyes. Phew! Jian Wushuang let out a breath of relief and revealed a smile across his face. After comprehension for 70 years on the Sword Mountain, my understanding towards sword principle has increased tremendously. Although I still have yet to create a unique skill of real god level, I have created the 2nd rank 3 strongest unique skill besides enduring samsara. This stroke advances bravely. It won't stop without tearing apart or eliminating the person. As the sword light swings out, it is like a frightened swan. As such, the stroke should be named Frightened Swan. Jian Wushuang smiled. Frightened Swan stroke was created, and Jian Wushuang's swordsmanship was one step closer to perfection. In Sky Sword Mountain, there were many buildings. Among these buildings, there were stores, bars, and also entertainment places. He was in front of a store then. "Take your leave leisurely," a malicious youth in a white robe said humbly as he sent 2 peak universe gods in the 3rd heaven away. "Sorry for giving you so much trouble." The 2 peak universe gods in the 3rd heaven didn't act haughtily, but one of them took out his Qian Kuan ring. "This is a token of appreciation, please take it." The malicious-looking youth in a white robe beamed with joy and accepted it. "If you were to come across any trouble in Sky Sword Mountain in the future, come and look for me." "Sure." The 2 peak universe gods in the 3rd heaven left very soon after. The malicious-looking youth in white robe watched the 2 of them left and immediately ran through the Qian Kuan ring. Then he immediately wore a satisfying smile across his face as he walked into the store again. Jian Wushuang, who was in the bar opposite the store, saw the scene. Universe God Mo Yen. Jian Wushuang's gaze was fixed on the malicious-looking youth in the white robe. His soul power covered the store entirely then. Universe God Mo Yen is really cunning. I've been in Sky Sword Mountain for 70 years, but I've never seen him leave the mountain. Plus, even when he's in Sky Sword Mountain, he normally stays in the store. In the nearby stores, there are at least 4 real gods. Jian Wushuang sighed in silence. He had waited in Sky Sword Mountain for 70 years. In the 70 years, most of the time he had comprehended at the Sword Mountain, but he was looking for a chance to take action simultaneously. However, for 70 years, he had never found any chance to take action. In the end, Jian Wushuang concluded that if he wanted to kill Universe God Mo Yen, he could only do it in the store, under the watch of the 4 real gods. If it were to be any ordinary cultivator, even if he was an expert of real god level, to kill Universe God Mo Yen under the watch of 4 real gods and leave would be almost impossible. However, I might stand a chance, Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. He was different from ordinary cultivators. After all, he was good at soul attacks. The scariest part about soul attacks were that he could kill his opponent quietly without much movement. Although the 4 real gods are nearby, it is impossible for them to disperse their consciousness at all times to pay close attention to their surroundings. Even if someone died near them, as long as there was no noise, no eruption of divine power, they shouldn't be able to discover it. This is my chance. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. Universe God Mo Yen, although he is a peak universe god in the 3rd heaven, he isn't strong in consciousness. He should only be at the level of an ordinary universe god in the 3rd heaven. According to my current soul strength, if I were to perform the inextinguishable light with the secret skill of Tian Yuan with full force, the sudden attack should have a high 70% chance to be able to kill him. A 70% success rate is already very high. After killing him, I will leave immediately. By the time the real gods realize, I should be out of Sky Sword Mountain. Jian Wushuang thought it through again and decided to take action. Immediately, Jian Wushuang left the bar and walked into the store opposite Universe God Mo Yen. Jian Wushuang arrived in the store and he saw the malicious-looking youth in a white robe who was inspecting a ton at the desk, Universe God Mo Yen. Besides Universe God Mo Yen, there were 2 servants at the entrance of the store. Universe God Mo Yen's eyes beamed with joy the moment he saw Jian Wushuang enter. He could feel Jian Wushuang's aura, which revealed him to be a peak universe god in the 3rd heaven. On Sky Sword Mountain, peak universe gods in the 3rd heaven were all big customers. "Mister, how can I help you?" Universe God Mo Yen stood up and asked with a smile. "I need a few elixirs to help to stabilize my mind and body. It must be of a higher level. I wonder if you sell them?" Jian Wushuang asked. "Of course. But we at Sky Sword Mountain sell things at a higher price compared to other places. I wonder if Mr. can accept this?" Universe God Mo Yen asked again. Chapter 1451, Sudden Change. Chapter 1451, Sudden Change. "I want an elixir. As for chaos gems, it wouldn't be a problem," Jian Wushuang said. "If so, please follow me to the secret room for further discussion," Universe God Mo Yen said. "Secret room?" Jian Wushuang was happy, but he wore a poker face. "Sure. Please." Under the lead of Universe God Mo Yen, Jian Wushuang walked into the secret room in the interior of the shop. On the way, Jian Wushuang took out a token secretly. The token was a mirror token, specially used to record the mirror image. The mirror image was also the item that Jian Wushuang used to prove that he had completed the task alone. Universe God Mo Yen led Jian Wushuang and they arrived at the secret room. There was a glimmer of light in Jian Wushuang's eyes and his soul power covered the surroundings. He instantly determined that it was the best time for him to take action. "Universe God Mo Yen," Jian Wushuang suddenly spoke. "Huh, how did you know my name?" Universe God Mo Yen turned around in surprise. Just as he turned, a silent soul light pierced into him without any sign. Too fast, and they were too close to one another. Universe God Mo Yen couldn't respond at all. The soul light hit his consciousness and destroyed his consciousness easily, like breaking dead wood. Universe God Mo Yen stared but didn't make any sound. His body was still standing but never fell. However, his aura had already dispersed. Success! Jian Wushuang tightened his grip. Just as he had expected, Universe God Mo Yam's consciousness strength was of a normal standard among peak universe gods in the 3rd heaven. He performed the second layer of the secret skill of Tian Yuan with his all-inextinguishable light, and under the condition that caught Universe God Mo Yen by surprise, it was not possible for him to block the attack. His consciousness was destroyed directly. After he killed Universe God Mo Yen, Jian Wushuang took away his Qian Kun ring. Then he didn't stay any longer in the private room, but left the shop directly. Jian Wushuang looked calm as he walked to the entrance of the shop. The two attendants bowed at him politely but didn't notice anything unusual. Jian Wushuang left the shop without hindrance. Everything was just as planned. As long as there's no movement, there shouldn't be anyone who notices Universe God Mo Yan's death. Before they react, I should already leave the place. They won't be able to catch me in time. The third part of the task isn't as difficult as I'd imagined. Jian Wushuang smiled as he prepared to leave Sky Sword Mountain swiftly. Humph! How dare you kill in Sky Sword Mountain? You have guts! An angry bellow that seemed to be from out of the highest heavens suddenly reverberated through Sky Sword Mountain. The voice was as loud as thunder, and it shook all the cultivators in Sky Sword Mountain. Rumble! A terrifying power instantly concentrated in the sky above. What? Jian Wushuang's face changed. He lifted his head in shock and realized that there was a huge hand towering above his head. The towering, huge hand was moving towards him slowly. It made Jian Wushuang feel as though his head was exploding, and there was an unprecedented fear growing in him. It's almighty, it's almighty! The king of venomous worms' voice and groan was suddenly heard in Jian Wushuang's head. How is this possible? Jian Wushuang was in disbelief. He was confident that he had done it flawlessly. The real gods in Sky Sword Mountain has yet to notice Universe God Mo Yan's death, and he could totally escape. However, he had never expected that the real god wouldn't notice, but the most terrifying existence on Sky Sword Mountain, the owner of Sky Sword Mountain, would instead. After the owner of Sky Sword Mountain found out, he took action against him immediately. The Almighty took action on his own. Even Jian Wushuang felt hopeless. In and out of Sky Sword Mountain, countless cultivators, including various real gods, looked up in terror. All of them were staring at the towering hand. This is the Almighty's doing. In Sky Sword Mountain, there's only one Almighty, who is the owner of Sky Sword Mountain. Who is it? He provoked the owner of Sky Sword Mountain to take action himself? Killing in Sky Sword Mountain? And caught by the owner of Sky Sword Mountain himself. TSK. This person is doomed. Everyone was greatly astonished and pitied Jian Wushuang. Rumble. The towering hand slowly descended. It looked slow, but there was a feeling that soared up in Jian Wushuang that he couldn't resist or avoid it. He could only stand there and watch as he waited for the huge hand to eliminate him. He had no power to struggle nor fight back. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain, I'm a disciple of Star Palace, Jian Wushuang shouted in madness. His voice spread across the entire Sky Sword Mountain. It was Jian Wushuang's last chance. He could only hope for the owner of Sky Sword Mountain to be lenient because of the lineage of Star. Humph, so what if you are the disciple of Star Palace? This is Sky Sword Mountain. No one has the right to violate my rules here in Sky Sword Mountain. However, as you are only a universe god, I will not kill you. I will send you to Sky Sword Prison for you to perish. The magnificent voice reverberated in the universe once again. After it was done, the towering hand suddenly increased in speed and clawed towards Jian Wushuang at lightning speed. Jian Wushuang had no power to fight back, and he could only watch as the towering hand picked him up like a chick and threw him. There was a wormhole that appeared in the surrounding void, and Jian Wushuang's figure instantly drowned in the wormhole and disappeared. After it did all that, the towering hand slowly dispersed and the magnificent voice wasn't heard again. The entire Sky Sword Mountain resumed its silence. However, the countless cultivators on Sky Sword Mountain, including the real gods, were still astonished. Earlier, when the hand descended, I felt like the sky was going to collapse. I had no intention to fight back. It was too scary. Almighty, it's an Almighty's way. The universe god is imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison by the owner of Sky Sword Mountain. Sky Sword Prison? Where's that? You don't know? TSK Disket. It is widely recognized by the nearby 72 holy kingdoms that it is the scariest place. Even the real gods would be petrified if they heard the name. A universe god who is imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison, I'm afraid he will stand no hope to get out of it. However, he was audacious enough to kill in Sky Sword Mountain, so he deserved it. The cultivators in Sky Sword Mountain continued to discuss among themselves. It only subsided after a few days. Very soon, Sky Sword Mountain resumed its tranquility. Chapter 1452, Sky Sword Prison. Chapter 1452, Sky Sword Prison. The place was in complete isolation from the outside world. It was a boundless crimson land called Sky Sword Prison. Crimson sky and dark boundless ground, there was a pungent blood smell in the air. Virum. A part of the void suddenly distorted and was then followed by a flowing light that erupted from the distorted void. Its speed was extremely swift and it slammed down at the bare mountain. Bang! A loud thud, then the mountain exploded entirely as shattered debris dispersed. Underneath the broken stones, a figure struggled and stood up slowly. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain is quite brutal. Luckily, my divine body is extremely strong and I can withstand such strong impact. Otherwise, if I were to be any ordinary peak universe god in the third heaven, from the slam on the mountain, I'd already have lost my skin. Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows as he felt the churning blood in his body. Very soon he recovered his body status. This is... Jian Wushuang looked around as he swept out his soul power. He realized that his soul power was hindered and the range he covered was barely 1/5 of what he could in the outside world. This space is extremely strange, Jian Wushuang muttered and immediately took out a token. He tried to send a message to Hall Master Yuan, but the message couldn't be sent. He was surprised by that. He understood that he was in Sky Sword Prison that the owner of Sky Sword Mountain mentioned earlier. As it was a prison, it naturally wouldn't be an ordinary one. If one could communicate with people in the outside world, it wouldn't be called a prison. I'm in big trouble, Jian Wushuang sighed. He never thought that the owner of Sky Sword Mountain would notice during the process of him completing his task and that he would imprison him in Sky Sword Prison. He had once heard that Sky Sword Prison was an extremely terrifying place during his 70 years in Sky Sword Mountain. It seemed that most of the people who broke the rules on Sky Sword Mountain would be imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison. However, the people in the outside world only knew of the existence of the prison. No one knew where the prison was or what would one encounter in the prison. Although it's a troublesome situation, it's much better than losing my life straight away. Plus, I already revealed my identity when I was thrown into this prison. Hall Master Yuan should find out that I'm detained from the owner of Sky Sword Mountain very soon, and he should be figuring out a way to save me. However, before that, I'll need to figure a way to stay alive in here. Jian Wushuang looked around with a solemn look. He could clearly feel the bloody scent in the air. Such a pungent bloody scent showed that Sky Sword Prison must be going through a mad massacre all the time. After he had thought for a while, Jian Wushuang plunged towards a direction. He was very slow in speed. He didn't know much about Sky Sword Prison, after all. He naturally didn't dare to barge in. 3 days later. A vague shadow in a luxuriantly grown bush suddenly lifted its head. Through the gaps among the tree leaves, he could see that there was a young man in red robe carrying a sword behind his back appeared in the void above and flew past the top of his head. Red robe? Sword? This look, I've never seen it. Could he be a newcomer? Jia, here comes the opportunity. The vague shadow was overjoyed. He stared at the young man in red robe's eyes above and he was beaming with excitement too. The aura all over his body was hidden to its limit and it could be said that it was flawless. Right at that moment, the young man in the red robe flew past the top of his head. Swoosh! The vague shadow suddenly plunged like a cheetah. The speed was too swift. He swept up from the bush below but instantly appeared in the sky 1,000 miles above and appeared behind the young man in red robe. Then pissed. An extremely sharp claw that could tear the skies suddenly descended and a terrifying murderous intention exploded. At such a close distance, this boy will be doomed. The vague shadow saw that the young man in the red robe couldn't find him at the first instance, and he relaxed. Just as he slashed the sharp claws at the young man in the red robe, the young man who had been facing him suddenly turned around. At the moment he turned around, his eyes flashed out a crimson light. The crimson light was like a crimson sun, extremely harsh to the eye, yet eye-catching. It was Jian Wushuang's 18 Azura Hell. One must know that Jian Wushuang had already lit up his soul fire and his soul power was spread around him all the time. Although the vague shadow had hidden among the bush without any sign, it was almost impossible to hide from the probe of Jian Wushuang's soul power. Jian Wushuang had noticed the existence of the vague shadow long ago. He hadn't exposed him. When the vague shadow launched an attack, he suddenly performed his technique. The vague shadow saw the crimson sun immediately and suddenly drowned in a phantasmagoria. Humph! The vague shadow quickly shook off from the dreamland and harumphed. He swept out his sharp claws and then continued to explode with action after pausing for just a short while. You resisted my 18 Azura Hell so easily? Jian Wushuang was shocked but immediately wielded his sword. A terrifying sword intention suddenly erupted. Ding, ding, dang! Jian Wushuang exchanged blows with the vague shadow at lightning speed. In an instant, they had already slashed thrice. The impact from the 3 collisions made Jian Wushuang take 2 steps back, but the vague shadow grew imposing and its body turned into a 2-meter-tall, golden, exotic beast. The exotic beast used its claws and slashed. Kacha kacha! Jian Wushuang could faintly hear that there was an explosive sound in the air. Its terrifying power made Jian Wushuang grow distressed. Go away! Jian Wushuang's Blood Mountain sword immediately erupted with a terrifying scarlet light. The slight bit of power of reincarnation that he had comprehended suddenly flowed into his sword principle and increased the power tremendously. Rumble! The sword light and the claw collided directly and the 2 bolts of terrifying power exploded. The golden exotic beast that the vague shadow had turned into flew off from the attack directly. 3rd level? Just as the golden exotic beast retreated, it exclaimed in surprise. After he steadied himself, he didn't hesitate but turned around to run away. Want to escape? Jian Wushuang's face grew cold and he took out a gold calabash. Rumble! A large amount of blazing quicksand flowed out and instantly flooded the vast void. The golden exotic beast was engulfed within and the quicksand region immediately took effect. Chapter 1453, Experts in the Prison. Chapter 1453, Experts in the Prison. Regional Treasure. The golden exotic beast noticed the regional power from the surrounding and it felt stressed. But then, its back suddenly grew a pair of golden wings. With the golden wings, its traveling speed suddenly increased and it flew through the quicksand instantly. Although the blazing quicksand formed pressure, it couldn't stop the beast. In the blink of an eye, the golden exotic beast dashed out from the blazing quicksand region. He ran away? Jian Wushuang's facial expression changed. In the nearby void, after the golden exotic beast ran away from the glazing quicksand, it stopped. Then, the golden exotic beast slowly dispersed and revealed its original appearance of a human man. He was a skinny, cold-looking young man. The young man's eyes looked devilish, and he was looking at Jian Wushuang. Newbie, not too shabby, the young man smiled. Who are you? Jian Wushuang stared at the young man. I'm Luo Meng. I was once famous in one of the holy kingdoms. But now, just like you, I'm a pathetic prisoner of Sky Sword Prison. The young man Luo Meng made fun of himself. How long have you been imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison? Jian Wushuang asked. Not long. About 80,000 years, Luo Meng replied at ease, but, in actual fact, he already knew just how dangerous it was to live in Sky Sword Prison. Newbie, let me remind you. Although you're quite powerful, stronger than I am, there are many people who could kill you in Sky Sword Prison. Hence, you'd better not move around the prison as you wish. It'd be best if you were to be like me, find a spot to hide. Then you'll be able to live, Luo Meng said. We are all people who are imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison. I've never once provoked them, why would they want to kill me? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows and asked. It seems that you don't know anything about the rules in Sky Sword Prison. But that makes sense. When I was first thrown in Sky Sword Prison, I was just like you. Luo Meng smiled faintly and continued, it is rare to come across a newbie in Sky Sword Prison. I might as well share what I know with you. It is needless for me to explain about the origins of Sky Sword Prison. It was created by the owner of Sky Sword Mountain especially to imprison experts. Ever since Sky Sword Prison existed, there have been more than a few millions of experts, or maybe a few billions experts imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison over the years. Why are there be so many? Jian Wushuang didn't understand. Sky Sword Mountain was famous in Eternal Chaotic World, and the owner of Sky Sword Mountain was an almighty. Generally speaking, there would be almost none who had the guts to offend such a strong force. For instance, he himself had only offended the owner of Sky Sword Mountain in order to complete the task that Lineage of Star assigned. Otherwise, he wouldn't offend such a powerful force. As there was no one who had the guts to provoke him, why would there be so many experts imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison? You thought only those who offended Sky Sword Mountain would be imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison? Luo Meng sneered at him, let me tell you, among the cultivators who are imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison, 99% of them weren't imprisoned in Sky Sword Mountain because they offended Sky Sword Mountain but because they committed crimes in various holy kingdoms. Some of them massacred, some offended experts of a higher level, some were dragged in. In short, there are many reasons to be imprisoned. Like me, I am imprisoned due to my connections with my own sect. Connections? Jian Wushuang was confused. The sect that I was in was destroyed entirely because we offended the royal in the holy kingdom that we were in. Then, universe gods who were in the third heaven and above from the sect were sent to Sky Sword Prison. Naturally, it included me. Luo Meng smiled faintly. From what I know, the owner of Sky Sword Mountain, who created Sky Sword Prison, looks like he only controlled Sky Sword Mountain. But in actual fact, he controls a total of 72 holy kingdoms in Eternal Chaotic World. They are all appendages to Sky Sword Mountain. Among the 72 holy kingdoms, whichever cultivator conducted iniquity or offended the royal cultivators, any universe god below the third heaven would be eliminated directly, while cultivators who were of a level higher than universe god in the third heaven would be sent into Sky Sword Prison. After all these years, tell me, just how many cultivators are there who have been imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison? Jian Wushuang asked, and he was astonished. A total of 72 holy kingdoms. Holy kingdoms. Although it was far beyond comparison with cultivation sanctuaries, a holy kingdom covered a wide expanse of territory and the number of cultivators was huge. It was definitely an astronomical figure. There were countless universe gods in the holy kingdom. Of course, there would be some real gods too. A total of 72 holy kingdoms. Then, there must be an even larger number of cultivators. Over the years, there was definitely a large number of universe god in the third heaven who had committed crime or offended a royal member. The number of a few million or a few billion was normal. Not long after the cultivators were imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison, the owner of Sky Sword Mountain set a rule for Sky Sword Prison. All prisoners in the prison could kill other prisoners in exchange for an opportunity to leave. A universe god in the third heaven is required to kill 100 cultivators of the same level, or 10 real gods who are above his level. Then he can leave. As for real god, they have to kill 1,000 universe gods in the third heaven to be able to leave. Sky Sword Prison has a unique ability. It can gauge how many people you killed in the prison. Generally, there won't be a mistake. It is the only chance for us prisoners to leave Sky Sword Prison, Luo Meng explained. Oh, I see. No wonder, you said that the prisoners in Sky Sword Prison, including yourself, would want to kill me. Jian Wushuang nodded as he understood. But he suddenly responded. You said earlier that there are real gods imprisoned here too. Yes, Quite a number of them, Luo Meng said. Real gods are far stronger than universe gods in the third heaven. Even the weakest real god should be able to create a massacre in the prison. It shouldn't be difficult to kill 1,000 universe gods in the third heaven, right? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows and asked. It isn't as easy as you thought it'd be. Luo Meng smiled. In Sky Sword Prison, comparing real gods with universe gods in the third heaven, the ratio wasn't as one-sided. After all cultivators who are imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison are restricted by the limitation in Sky Sword Prison. Everyone's divine power is capped at the level of a peak universe god in the third heaven. In other words, even if one were a real god who was extremely powerful, his divine power would be capped at the level of a peak universe god in the third heaven while he's in here. Chapter 1454, 4 Levels. Chapter 1454, 4 Levels. I see. Jian Wushuang understood. Although real gods were much stronger than universe god in the third heaven, the difference was mainly in divine power. When the divine power of an expert of real god rank erupted, it was far beyond a universe god in the third heaven. Forget about the eruption of divine power, the advantage a real god had over a universe god of the third heaven wasn't that big. For instance, many universe gods in the third heaven were much stronger than real gods in unique skill and comprehension of the power of Heaven Way. As such, it wouldn't be as easy for a real god to kill 1,000 universe gods in the third heaven. Forget about the fact that the divine power of real god is restrained, it wouldn't be that easy to kill a universe god in the third heaven. Even if the real god really had an exceedingly great power, the most crucial part is that there aren't that many cultivators in Sky Sword Prison, Luo Meng smiled. Not many? How many are there? Jian Wushuang asked. Throughout the years, there were millions or even tens of millions of cultivators that were imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison. However, these cultivators live by endless massacres. How many are left? From what I know, adding up all cultivators in Sky Sword Prison currency, there shouldn't be more than 1,500 of them. Plus, the 1,500 cultivators who are able to live through endless massacres and stay alive must be extremely capable. Most importantly, they possess strong survival ability. Even if the two were different in power, it would be difficult for them to kill one another, Luo Meng said. Jian Wushuang understood. He had fought against Luo Meng earlier and he was much stronger than Luo Meng, but Jian Wushuang couldn't make him stay. It was because Luo Meng was extremely fast and had extremely strong survival skills. With his speed, even if he were to encounter any ordinary real god in Sky Sword Prison, he should be able to survive. It'd be impossible to achieve the owner of Sky Sword Prison's criteria to leave in a short period of time. So, every one of us is enduring it, Luo Meng said. After all these years, there are some experts that achieved his criteria and left Sky Sword Prison alive. Jian Wushuang nodded in silence and finally understood Lei Meng's feelings when he said that he was only a poor prisoner. Newbie, what's your name? Luo Meng suddenly asked. Jian Wushuang replied. Jian Wushuang, as you have chatted with me for so long, let me give you a helping hand. Here's the information of many experts that I've collected through the 80,000 years that I've spent in Sky Sword Prison. I am giving you a copy so you have a basic understanding. If you run into any experts that you can't deal with in Sky Sword Prison, run as far as you can, Luo Meng said. Then he waved and threw a token at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang caught it directly. Jian Wushuang, I hope that you will still be alive in Sky Sword Prison 10,000 years later. Then, Lei Meng moved and suddenly sped up. He disappeared before Jian Wushuang's eyes very quickly. Watching Lei Meng leave, Jian Wushuang muttered, I hope that you and I can leave Sky Sword Prison alive. Jian Wushuang immediately got up. Soon he found a place in the mountain and hid. Then, the token that Luo Meng had given him appeared in his hand. In the token, Luo Meng recorded the information of various experts that he knew of during the 80,000 years in Sky Sword Prison. He immediately started to read carefully. Very quickly, Jian Wushuang was surprised. There are so many real gods in Sky Sword Prison, Jian Wushuang exclaimed. Luo Meng had stayed in Sky Sword Prison for 80,000 years, and he had recorded a total of 1,466 experts on the token. Among the 1,466 experts, there were 1,381 universe gods in the third heaven, and the rest of the 85 were all real gods. However, they were restrained by the limitations of Sky Sword Prison. Hence, they could only perform divine powers of a peak universe god in the third heaven. Why is there so many? Jian Wushuang was surprised. One should know that even in 10 cultivation sanctuaries, real god experts belonged to the top experts too. In 10 cultivation sanctuaries, some weaker force would only have 2 to 3 real gods who were at the highest level of fighting power. If they were to be in any holy kingdom, a real god would definitely be in existence of Overlord. Just like the Snow Kingdom that Jian Wushuang was in back then, he had only seen one real god in Snow Kingdom, which was Master of Silence Gloriette, and Master of Silence Gloriette's position in Snow Kingdom was extremely high and respectable. There was 85 similar real gods imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison. Jian Wushuang, you must clarify one thing. King of Venomous Worms suddenly spoke. In 10 cultivation sanctuaries, real gods are really top experts, but there was a difference of strength in real gods too. If I'm not mistaken, the real gods that are imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison should be real gods who are weaker. Real gods who are really at the top would definitely not be here. Besides, although real gods are powerful to an almighty, they aren't much different from ants. With the owner of Sky Sword Mountain's power, forget about the 85 real gods that are imprisoned. Even imprisoning hundreds of real gods would be easy for them. Jian Wushuang was dumbfounded. Then he continued to read the information in the token. Lei Meng was in Sky Sword Prison for 80,000 years, and it wasn't in vain. The collection of information about the experts is quite detailed. He has even categorized the experts into 4 levels according to their power. Jian Wushuang's expression grew strange. 4 levels. It was the simplest method to categorize the experts in Sky Sword Prison. After all, real gods' divine power was constrained by the limitation of Sky Sword Prison. Hence, they couldn't just differentiate them as real gods and universe gods. The 4 levels that Luo Meng had come up with was rather complete. Out of the 4 levels, the weakest would be the 4th. The level was formed by universe gods in the 3rd heaven. Generally, they only created peak rank 3 unique skill or rank 3 strongest unique skill. Their overall power wasn't too strong. If they were to be put in the outside world in Eternal Chaotic World, they would be the top universe gods in the 3rd heaven. However, in Sky Sword Prison, they were the ones at the bottom of the endless massacre. Just like Lei Meng himself, who was at the 4th level. But he was considered the top in the 4th level. The 3rd level was made up of universe gods in the 3rd heaven who had created real god unique skill and those ordinary or weaker real gods, and also a few universe gods in the 3rd heaven who had comprehended a slight bit of the power of Heaven Way. There was quite a large number of cultivators at this level in Sky Sword Prison. While on the 2nd level, Chapter 1455, Jian Wushuang's Strength. Chapter 1455. Jian Wushuang's Strength. The 2nd level was made of real gods who comprehended a slight bit of power of Heaven Way and also universe gods in the 3rd heaven who had high comprehension power towards power of Heaven Way and were extremely powerful. In Sky Sword Prison, most of the cultivators were at the 3rd or the 4th level. There were very few who were at the 2nd level. As for the 1st level, they were at the highest level in Sky Sword Prison, a bunch of experts who were on the top. There were only 4 people in the bunch of people. The 4 of them were referred to as the 4 kings. They were the epitome of unrivaled. According to Luo Meng's understanding of the 4 kings, they were all real gods that were extremely strong in power. They had extremely high comprehension power towards power of Heaven Way. It was said that they had reached the level of the Doctrine Palace. Doctrine Palace? Jian Wushuang was confused. Jian Wushuang, Doctrine Palace is a place in the 10 cultivation sanctuaries to examine one's comprehension power towards power of Heaven Way. Out of the 10 cultivation sanctuaries, each and every one of them have one Doctrine Palace, and there are 9 levels in the Doctrine Palace. Every level represents a different level of comprehension. Regardless of if you are comprehending the 9 Heaven God doctrine or the Supreme Four doctrine, the Doctrine Palace could precisely determine your comprehension level. The first level of Doctrine Palace, although it was only the first level, would require an extremely high level of comprehension power. Like yourself, although you comprehended a slight bit of power of Heaven Way, it is merely at the beginner level. You are far from passing through the first level of Doctrine Palace. Even Zhao Han, who fought against you in the Boundless Void previously, his comprehension of Myriad Beast Doctrine is higher than your comprehension of Reincarnation Doctrine. However, he is also far from passing through the first level of Doctrine Palace. The Four Kings, as they possess the standard of comprehension towards power of Heaven Way of the first level in Doctrine Palace, even if they could only perform divine power capped at the level of peak universe God in the third heaven, they could still carry out their capability as real gods. It should be extremely easy to kill the current you. King of Venomous Worm's voice was heard in Jian Wushuang's head. Jian Wushuang kept quiet. According to the token, my current power should only be on the third level, Jian Wushuang sighed. The third level was made of real gods who were weaker and created real god unique skills, and also universe gods in the third heaven who comprehended the power of Heaven Way. Jian Wushuang also comprehended a slight bit of power of Heaven Way, but he had yet to create any real god unique skills. He was really on the third level, and it wasn't the top of the third level. Universe gods who comprehended the power of Heaven Way. If they were in Eternal Chaotic World, they would be listed on the Universe God ranking list. It is rare to see any in the outside world. However, in Sky Sword Prison, there are a total of 10 universe gods who have comprehended the power of Heaven Way. So many of them. Jian Wushuang was amazed. Humph, over so years, there have been so many universe gods in the third heaven who are imprisoned, and in such a mad massacre environment where the fittest survive, it's no surprise that it gives birth to many experts who possess fighting power like one on the universe god ranking list. King of Venomous Worms scoffed. Jian Wushuang, I remind you to not be puzzled by the surface phenomena. Even in the 10 cultivation sanctuaries, although the universe god ranking list has gathered the top universe gods experts, the experts are only those who have revealed their capability and stepped into the limelight. However, in the 10 cultivation sanctuaries and the entire expanse of Eternal Chaotic World, among the countless holy kingdoms, there are many experts. They possess fighting power like one on the universe god ranking list, but they never once reveal their power, nor do they seek fame, just like yourself. You possess the fighting power of one on universe god ranking list, but you are not on the list. You mean that there are many universe gods in a similar state to me in Eternal Chaotic World? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. Of course, in Sky Sword Prison itself, aren't there a dozen of them? King of Venomous Worms said. Jian Wushuang understood. After having a brief understanding of the experts in Sky Sword Prison, Jian Wushuang sighed with emotion. After all, Sky Sword Prison was created by the owner of Sky Sword Mountain, and the owner of Sky Sword Mountain already knew that I was a disciple of Star Palace but still imprisoned me. He naturally isn't afraid of Lineage of Star, hence, even if Lineage of Star has already found out that I'm imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison, they won't be able to rescue me in a short period of time. Plus, I must take the best and the worst situation into consideration. I can't place all my hopes on Lineage of Star. I must also rely on myself. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain set a rule that as long as I can kill 100 universe gods in the third heaven, or even 10 real gods, I can leave. That's also my way out. Jian Wushuang knew that there should be quite a number of universe gods and real gods who left from Sky Sword Prison for the past years. Of course, he wished that he was one of them. However, I have just arrived in Sky Sword Prison, and I am not at the top of the chain in power within Sky Sword Prison. It is impossible for me to kill 100 universe gods immediately and leave here. I can only take my time. Before that, I have to set foot in Sky Sword Prison steadily. Jian Wushuang clenched his fists. With his current ability, it wasn't difficult for him to keep his footing in Sky Sword Prison. After all, he possessed a divine body of real god level. His blood-killing plate armor had strong defense power too. As long as he didn't encounter any experts of the second and the first level, he shouldn't be in a life-threatening situation. Most importantly, compared to other experts in Sky Sword Prison, he was at an advantage. It was that he possessed soul power. His soul power coverage was wide, far beyond that of real gods. Once he launched his soul power, no matter which invisibility means one was using, one would be exposed. No matter who it was, once someone appeared around him, he could notice at the first instant and identify the person's power. If he were to come across anyone who was strong and he was unable to deal with, he could totally avoid them. Then, Jian Wushuang was put in an advantageous position. He would be able to make trouble with others, but it was impossible for the others to surprise attack him. Just like when Luo Meng, who once surprise attacked him, Jian Wushuang had noticed him long ago. Let's begin. I shall see just how strong the prisoners in Sky Sword Prison are. With a tinge of excitement, Jian Wushuang started wandering in Sky Sword Prison. Sky Sword Mountain. Under the 9 lofty sword mountains, there was a secluded cave dwelling. In the cave dwelling, there was a person carrying 3 long swords. A middle-aged man who was like an enduring, ferocious sword, sat there with his eyes closed. Suddenly, the middle-aged man's eyes shot open. The moment he opened his eyes, there was an explosion of sword intention. The middle-aged man waved his hand. The void before him became distorted and there was another middle-aged man that appeared before him. Although the figure was blurry, Jian Wushuang could definitely recognize at the first glance that it was Hall Master Yuan from Lineage of Star. Chapter 1456, Misfortune. Chapter 1456, Misfortune. One of the 3 Hall Masters in Lineage of Star, Hall Master Yuan, who possessed extremely strong power in Lineage of Star, behaved rather humbly at that very moment before the middle-aged man. Mr. Tianjian, sorry to trouble you, Hall Master Yuan smiled. It's nothing. Don't mention it. The middle-aged man was the owner of Sky Sword Mountain. His voice was cold as he spoke. As you have requested, I imprisoned the young man in Sky Sword Prison following a matter of course. However, Sky Sword Prison is extremely dangerous and it's impossible for me to keep an eye on him all the time. Hence, if the young man were to run into an accident in Sky Sword Prison, I would not be responsible. Of course, Hall Master Yuan smiled. You look like you are very confident in the young man. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain looked at Hall Master Yuan. If I were not confident, why would I dare to ask Mr. Tianjian to send him into Sky Sword Prison? Hall Master Yuan smiled as he replied. The others didn't know Jian Wushuang's direct line of descendants, but Hall Master Yuan did. He knew Jian Wushuang had cultivated Shen Mie Golden Body and completed the first fraction. His divine body could be compared favorably with a real god's. Plus, he had defense treasure with him. In Sky Sword Prison, everyone's divine power was restrained. Hence, it wouldn't be easy to kill Jian Wushuang, whose defense power was so strong. Plus, he also knew that Jian Wushuang possessed soul power. It was one of the biggest advantages he had. With the two, as long as Jian Wushuang was careful and didn't catch the eye of the few top experts in Sky Sword Prison, he shouldn't be in too much danger. How long do you want me to imprison him for? The owner of Sky Sword Mountain asked. 10,000 years, Hallmaster answered. 10,000 years should give the young man enough experience in Sky Sword Prison. If he were to be lucky, he might already reach the criteria to leave Sky Sword Prison before 10,000 years. Achieve the criteria on his own? To kill 100 universe gods in the 3rd heaven in Sky Sword Prison? The owner of Sky Sword Prison raised his eyebrows. If so, I will be rubbing my eyes in anticipation. Hall Master Yuan smiled faintly and then his blurry figure vanished into the cave dwelling. 10,000 years to achieve the criteria to leave Sky Sword Prison? Hee, I'd love to see if the young man from Lineage of Star has the ability. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain sneered and closed his eyes. Jian Wushuang thought he was just unlucky that he had got imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison. He happened to be caught by the owner of Sky Sword Mountain right when he had killed Universe God Mo Yen. He didn't know that it wasn't because he was unlucky that he got imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison, but because Hall Master Yuan had intentionally arranged it for him. From Hall Master Yuan's point of view, although Sky Sword Prison was dangerous, it was also a great place for training. In the prison, not only were there universe gods who possessed fighting power of one on universe god ranking list, but there was also a large number of real gods. Especially as the real gods were restrained and could only carry out divine powers like a universe god in the third heaven, it was extremely valuable. In the outside world, Jian Wushuang, who was universe god, wouldn't have the chance to fight against a real god after all. However, there would be many chances in the Sky Sword Prison. Such a place was, of course, suitable for training. However, Jian Wushuang had no idea at all. He thought Hall Master Yuan was negotiating with the owner of Sky Sword Mountain to get him out. However, Jian Wushuang never placed hope on other people. In Sky Sword Prison, in the vast Crimson Land, Jian Wushuang was plunging forward in the void. His soul power had spread around long ago and filled the surrounding region. He could see everything in the region. Huh! Jian Wushuang suddenly paused and looked towards a direction to one side. There was a bare mountain in the direction. It didn't look strange, but Jian Wushuang could see clearly with the coverage of his soul power. At the bottom of the mountain, there was an expert hiding. Purple-haired, carrying a saber, and there is a faint scar in between his eyebrows. Jian Wushuang could even see the characteristic of the expert's appearance clearly with his soul power without the other person knowing. With his appearance and characteristics, Jian Wushuang immediately recognized the person. Wu Song of the third level, an expert close to the top. He's good with a sword and created a real god-unique skill. He's good in close combat and possesses a secret skill of defense. His divine body is extremely strong too. Jian Wushuang recalled the information about the expert. The experts from 4 different levels in Sky Sword Prison, putting aside the 4 kings from the strongest first level, although the other 3 levels of cultivators were of the same level, there was a difference in strength. Hence, there were top, intermediate, and low players at every level. Wu Song was of an intermediate standard of the 3rd level, close to the top. I just came to Sky Sword Prison and I only fought for a short while with Luo Meng, but Luo Meng is only an expert from the 4th level who had yet to create real god-unique skill. He isn't my match, but I can give him a try. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly and went forward towards the bare mountain. Just as Jian Wushuang appeared in the void surrounding the bare mountain, the expert who was hiding in the cave dwelling at the bottom of the mountain, Wu Song, immediately lifted his head. This person looks very unfamiliar. I've never seen him before. A newcomer. Wu Song immediately understood and he was beaming with joy. In Sky Sword Prison, newcomers were the easiest to kill normally. The experts who stayed in Sky Sword Prison for years had their measures to defend and they knew one another's ability clearly. Hence, it was extremely difficult to kill one another. Wu Song saw Jian Wushuang and he immediately had the intention to kill. He stopped? He's right above me. Did he notice me? Wu Song creased his eyebrows. Shouldn't be. My hiding skills are brilliant. Even when real gods pass by, they don't notice me if they don't probe carefully. Wu Song thought Jian Wushuang had happened to stop in the void above the mountain. But in actual fact, Jian Wushuang had locked him down via soul power long ago. Come out. In the void, Jian Wushuang's voice traveled through the mountain, layers of ground, into the cave dwelling and into Wu Song's ears. He really found me. Wu Song creased his eyebrows, but he didn't hesitate and exited the ground directly. He appeared in the void above, before Jian Wushuang. Newbie, your consciousness senses are not too shabby. You can even notice my existence. Wu Song carried his saber behind his back and he crossed his arms. He looked at Jian Wushuang with a malicious smile. Chapter 1457, Lesson. Chapter 1457, Lesson. Such a strong murderous intention. Jian Wushuang looked at Wu Song before him and felt the terrifying murderous intentions soaring from his body. His pupils contracted. In Sky Sword Prison, the massacring was crazy. There was no reason required to kill anyone. In the mad massacre, the experts in the prison had terrifying murderous intentions. Jian Wushuang flipped his wrist and Blood Mountain sword appeared in his hand instantly. Haha, I shall see just how powerful you are, newbie, and see if you can live in Sky Sword Prison. Wu Tsang laughed and suddenly his figure turned vague. Swoosh! A ghostly figure suddenly appeared before Jian Wushuang and there was a green saber that swung out. So fast! Jian Wushuang was shocked. The expert information provided by Luo Meng highlighted that Wu Tsang was good with swords and his close combat power was strong. It noted that his divine body was strong too, but there weren't any specifications on how fast his speed was. Then, the speed that Wu Tsang showed caught Jian Wushuang by surprise. The moment the blade light descended, Jian Wushuang transformed his divine power and Blood Sword Mountain became a ray of crimson shadow to counterattack. Dang! There was a loud clash and the fierce strength spread. Jian Wushuang's figure shook faintly. Terrifying strength too. Although his divine power is only at the standard of a peak universe god in the third heaven, he has cultivated some kind of secret skill and the secret skill increased his divine power, which seems to be stronger by a nose compared to mine, Jian Wushuang sighed. The next moment, the power of blood-killing plate armor erupted and his strength increased tremendously. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Jian Wushuang's Blood Mountain sword swept out like a snake and instantly pierced 5 holes in the void. However, Wu Tsang's figure moved around creepily and dodged the 5 attacks easily. Then, there was green light flowing out from his body that looked like a green dragon. Triple abrupt lightning. Wu Tsang held his saber with both his hands and slashed 3 times at lightning speed. The 3 slashes contained boundless power, just like 3 strikes of lightning that suddenly descended. Jian Wushuang immediately wielded his sword to withstand it. Ding, ding, dang! There were 3 loud clashes and Jian Wushuang staggered backwards from the attack. Newbie, your power is only at such level? Wu Tsang stood there and looked at Jian Wushuang with disdain. Jian Wushuang's face grew grave and there was a sudden soaring sword intention from his body. A fierce divine power suddenly erupted. Wow! A sword light suddenly shined out. The sword light was like a frightened swan. It instantly disappeared. However, as it whistled, there was an extremely terrifying, shrill aura that swept past. Sword Principle, Frightened Swan. It was created by Jian Wushuang after comprehending for 70 years under the 9 sword mountains in Sky Sword Mountain. It was the most ferocious stroke that Jian Wushuang had ever created. The moment he performed the stroke, Jian Wushuang immersed the slight bit of power of Heaven Wei that he had comprehended into the sword principle. The sudden explosion. Rank 3 strongest unique skill. Wu Tsang looked at the sudden stroke of Frightened Swan with a scornful look. Such a joke. Wu Tsang bellowed and took a huge stride. His body was like a green dragon while his blade was like a bolt of abrupt lightning. Walala! Boundless thunderous power swept out. Thunderous green dragon. Roar! There was suddenly a huge green dragon that plundered out from Wu Tsang's body. The green dragon immersed itself in the blade light and the power of blade light instantly increased in power tremendously. The stroke was obviously a real god-unique skill that Wu Tsang had created. Suddenly, the 2 bolts of terrifying attack collided. There was a loud thud and the Sky Sword Prison faintly shook. What? Wu Tsang's facial expression suddenly changed. Jian Wushuang had only performed sword principle of rank 3 strongest unique skill, so he didn't bother much. After they collided, he felt an extremely strong power from the sword principle. The power was the power of Heaven Wei. Swoosh, swoosh. Due to the impact, both Jian Wushuang and Wu Tsang staggered backwards. The frightened swan that Jian Wushuang had performed was only a rank 3 strongest unique skill after all. In terms of power, there was a huge difference compared to real god unique skill that Wu Tsang performed. However, due to the power of reincarnation, the 2 could be well matched. Young man, you're a newbie but you have already comprehended a slight bit of power of Heaven Wei? Wu Song's eyes were bloodshot red and obviously green with envy. One must know that he had been in Sky Sword Prison for almost 1,000,000 years. Through countless life and death situations, he had yet to comprehend even a slight bit of power of Heaven Wei. On the other hand, Jian Wushuang, who just come to Sky Sword Prison and had yet to experience a massacre in Sky Sword Prison, had already comprehended a slight bit of power of Heaven Wei. He was, of course, jealous. You comprehended a slight bit of power of Heaven Wei. Although you only created a rank 3 strongest unique skill, you are evenly matched with me. I can't kill you, but I can teach you a lesson. Wu Song's face was cold. Teach me a lesson? Jian Wushuang was stunned and then came back to reality. Swoosh! Wu Song's figure turned into a bolt of lightning and leaped before Jian Wushuang, then he slashed. Not only was he fast, but he was extremely ferocious too. Jian Wushuang immediately raised his sword to block. Just as he blocked the first slash, wow! Blade lights swept towards him like billowing waves one after another. Too fast, too ferocious. They were extremely strong. The terrifying blade light formed into an ocean and engulfed him. The explosion of Jian Wushuang's divine power reached his limit, and he wielded his sword to block. Right after he blocked the few blade lights, Wu Song's figure moved again in an unexplainable manner and appeared next to Jian Wushuang again. His body became a saber and hit Jian Wushuang as though he was a slash by a saber. That very moment, not only his body but also his thighs, knees and arms were like sabers slashing with flexibility. Jian Wushuang was astonished. This is a close combat fight. It was close combat fight. The information that Luo Meng had provided him with highlighted Wu Song's ability with close combat skills. Although Jian Wushuang noticed it previously, he didn't expect that Wu Song's close combat skill would be that strong. His body was like a saber. Every part of his body that could be used for attack seemed to have turned into a saber. From the continuous attack, Jian Wushuang was suppressed. Although he had amazing power, he couldn't give play to his power at all, but he could only retreat. He was totally in a fix. Rumble! Wu Song's thighs were like the back of the saber. It broke Jian Wushuang's defense and hit his body. Then, Jian Wushuang's body immediately turned into a flowing light and erupted. Swoosh! Wu Song's body paused in the void. With a cold smirk, he looked at Jian Wushuang, who finally steadied himself from afar. That's enough teaching. I shall leave. Wow! Wu Song suddenly retreated and also at lightning speed. Very soon, he disappeared from Jian Wushuang's eyes. Chapter 1458 Training. Chapter 1458 Training. This. Jian Wushuang stood there as he watched Wu Song leave. He took a long time to calm himself down. Too strong. His close combat power is too strong. Jian Wushuang exclaimed. Really scary. He thought that he had fought with many experts ever since he started cultivation, and his close combat power wasn't that weak either. However, when he had fought with Wu Song, the match was dominated by one side from the outset. Wu Song was the one with the strongest close combat power among all experts that he had fought before. Such a terrifying close combat power. Why wasn't it emphasized in the information that Luo Meng gave? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. From Luo Meng's information, the introduction about Wu Song had described his strong close combat power, but it didn't say just how strong it was. However, from Jian Wushuang's point of view, Wu Song's close combat power couldn't just be described as extremely strong. It should be described as terrifying. Unless most of the experts in Sky Sword Prison are good at close combat. Jian Wushuang thought, oh, the people in Sky Sword Prison are always in a massacre. The massacre itself would increase one's close combat power tremendously, and the people here are imprisoned for very long. They'd figure out all the ways to increase their own power. They wouldn't even let the least bit pass. Close combat power is extremely useful during an actual fight. These experts definitely try their best to enhance their power. Naturally, all of them are good at it. Jian Wushuang understood. If it were to be a cultivator from the outside world, when they reached a bottleneck and found it difficult to break through, most of them would look for a chance and opportunity to improve. However, it was different in Sky Sword Prison. There wasn't any chance or opportunity, only merciless massacre. Hence, once their power reached a bottleneck, they could only figure out ways to improve things that they could improve on. It also led to the scenario where most of the experts in Sky Sword Prison were very good at close combat. Wu Tsang, who had fought with Jian Wushuang earlier, his close combat power wasn't at the top in Sky Sword Prison. In terms of power, Wu Tsang and I are about the same. However, he relied on his close combat power to suppress me. Of course, that was because I didn't perform any secret skills, nor use my soul power. Otherwise, he would be the one in a fix. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. His strongest fighting power was a flawless combination of sword principle and soul power. That was the true fighting power of one on Universe God ranking list. He merely used his sword principle, but he never used a soul attack. He had yet to even reveal his trump cards. The battle with Wu Tsang reminded me that my close combat power isn't strong. There are many experts in Sky Sword Prison and most of them are good at close combat. With me wandering here, I could train my swordsmanship with the experts and simultaneously train close combat power. After all, there aren't many experts who would fight against me in the outside world. Plus, I have the painting of understanding sword via reincarnation with me. When I tried to comprehend it on my own blindly, the speed of improvement wasn't fast. But if I were to kill and train while I comprehend, the effect would be much better compared to before. Jian Wushuang then revealed a smile. In Sky Sword Prison, he saw the opportunity to train. An opportunity that he had never had anywhere else. Very soon, Jian Wushuang continued to wander in Sky Sword Prison. With the advantage of soul power, he wasn't worried that he would encounter much danger. After all, if he ran into anyone above the second level, experts who he couldn't provoke, he would avoid them. He could only fight with experts in Sky Sword Prison from the third or fourth level. Jian Wushuang had no intention of fighting with a real god in the third level either. After all, even the weakest real god in the third level, although they never once comprehended the power of Heaven Wei, their unique skill and secret skill were at a terrifying level. Even when their divine power was restrained, they weren't easy targets. Jian Wushuang planned to only fight against these real gods after he became stronger or after he had created a real god unique skill. By then he would really achieve the result of training. The time flew past. When Jian Wushuang had first came to Sky Sword Prison, not many of them knew. However, as Jian Wushuang continued to wander and fought against experts in the third and fourth level, the experts in Sky Sword Prison gradually got to know his existence. After all, although Sky Sword Prison couldn't be connected to the outside world, the experts in the prison could still communicate with one another freely. The messages weren't hindered. After Jian Wushuang fought many times, he was listed in the third level by many people's experts' information collection. He was listed as intermediate in the third level. Of course, Jian Wushuang wasn't there to train his swordsmanship and close combat power. Hence, he hardly used his soul power. If he were to use his soul power, he would be on the top in the third level. After the blink of an eye, Jian Wushuang had stayed in Sky Sword Prison for 170 years. In the 170 years, Jian Wushuang fought with many Universe God experts of the third and fourth level. There were victories and defeats. His swordsmanship and close combat power increased tremendously through the vigorous fighting, but it was a pity that he never once killed an expert in the 170 years. It wasn't because Jian Wushuang wasn't capable enough. It was because the experts in Sky Sword Prison had impressive survival skills. Even experts of the fourth level weren't easy targets to be killed. In Sky Sword Mountain, in the cave dwelling under the 9 lofty sword mountains, the middle-aged man sat. He was the owner of Sky Sword Mountain. He opened his eyes once again after 170 years. Then he glanced at the Sky Sword Prison which was under his control. He could see Jian Wushuang in Sky Sword Prison clearly. Huh! The owner of Sky Sword Mountain lifted the corners of his lips and revealed a smile in disdain. It has already been 170 years, this young man from lineage of star had yet to kill even one universe god in the third heaven. Yuan said that this young man could kill 100 universe gods in 10,000 years and leave Sky Sword Prison with his own ability. From the look of things, that is just a joke. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain closed his eyes again. As he was at a high level, he was not bothered by the life or death of the prisoners in Sky Sword Prison. But then, it was because of Jian Wushuang that he would pay more attention to Sky Sword Prison. Otherwise, he wouldn't bother to take a look at Sky Sword Prison even once in a time span of tens of thousands of years. Chapter 1459, Universe God Long Xiu. Chapter 1459, Universe God Long Xiu. In Sky Sword Prison, in the depths of the forest, Jian Wushuang was sitting on a huge rock as he slowly opened his eyes. My soul strength has reached the limitation of a universe god. There was a smile plastered on Jian Wushuang's face. For 170 years, when he was wandering in Sky Sword Prison, he was mostly fighting against experts to train his swordsmanship and close combat power. As for soul attacks, for 170 years, he had almost never used any soul attack. However, what Jian Wushuang had never expected was that even when he didn't intentionally improve his soul strength, it had reached the limit of a universe god's in the 170 years. At that level, it was already at the limit that a universe god could reach. Any higher would be the level of real god. Reaching such state, Jian Wushuang's soul attack would be a notch higher compared to before. Plus, in the 170 years, his swordsmanship and close combat power would improve tremendously. His overall power was one notch higher compared to before. The current me, if my full power were to be put into full play, out of the experts in the third level in Sky Sword Prison, I would be at the top. I am even close to the second level. It's a pity that I never created any real god-unique skills, and yet I can be compared favorably with the experts truly in the second level, Jian Wushuang sighed. With the aid of the painting of understanding sword via reincarnation, his comprehension towards reincarnation doctrine improved tremendously too. However, to be truly evenly matched with the real gods who comprehended the power of Heaven Wei on the second level, he still had a way to go. Continue to train. Jian Wushuang smiled and soon continued his journey in Sky Sword Prison again. During his journey, although he had never once killed any universe god, he wasn't in a hurry. To him then, it was most important to continuously improve his power. As for the massacre, it wasn't time yet. In the cold void, there was a breeze blowing. Against one's body, it made one's heart cold too. Jian Wushuang, in a crimson robe and carrying his sword on his back, moved forward slowly as his soul power swept across. Huh! Jian Wushuang was shocked as he noticed a figure that appeared within the coverage of his soul sensory. It was a blonde-haired, brawny man. Even though he was far away, Jian Wushuang could feel the raging tyrannical aura in his body. The blonde-haired brawny man reminded people of a ruthless lion. Universe God Long Xiu. There was a glimpse of light in Jian Wushuang's eyes, and he immediately plunged towards where the blonde-haired brawny man was. In an instant, Jian Wushuang appeared before the blonde-haired brawny man. If I'm not mistaken, you're Jian Wushuang who just got into Sky Sword Prison, right? The blonde-haired brawny man glared coldly at Jian Wushuang. I am, Jian Wushuang nodded. I've been wandering around Sky Sword Prison for 170 years and I have fought many experts. However, it is my first time seeing you, Universe God Long Xiu. You knew my identity, but you have the guts to appear before me so frankly. You are very courageous, the blonde-haired brawny man Universe God Long Xiu said. Jian Wushuang smiled at his reply. However, he knew clearly that Universe God Long Xiu said so not because he was arrogant, but because he had the right to. Universe God Long Xiu. Among the experts in Sky Sword Prison, he was on the third level, but he was at the top of the third level. Plus, Universe God Long Xiu was widely recognized as the most annoying one by all universe gods in Sky Sword Prison. He cultivated an impressive secret skill in martial art motion. His martial art motion was known as the first in Sky Sword Prison. Secondly, he was also good at his travel speed. When he runs at full speed, even a real god couldn't catch up with him. As for his divine body, he too was strong. In combination with defense secret skill and defense treasure, many real gods' defense power couldn't be evenly matched with his. A universe god who possessed terrifying martial art motion, fast in speed, strong divine body and almost no weakness. He could move around Sky Sword Prison as freely as he wished. There was a rumor that he had once met one of the kings of the first level in Sky Sword Prison. The king took action against him but didn't manage to kill him. One should know that the strongest in Sky Sword Prison was the 4 kings. Even the kings couldn't take care of him. Who else could kill him? Because so, although Universe God Long Xiu was only on the top of the 3rd level, he could move around Sky Sword Prison freely. Many experts on the 2nd level who met him would opt to detour without hesitation. But then, Jian Wushuang took the initiative when he found Universe God Long Xiu. That was why Universe God Long Xiu had complimented his courage. Jian Wushuang, you're just a newbie. You didn't find a place to hide but wandered around to fight against experts. It seems that you are trying to train yourself using the experts in Sky Sword Prison. Now, you took the initiative to look for me. But you want me to be one of your whetstones too? Universe God Long Xiu glared at Jian Wushuang. Huh, you live up to your reputation, Universe God Long Xiu. You could tell the purpose of my visit at first glance. However, the purpose of my visit is not only treating you as one of the whetstones but also, if possible, I'd like to take your head. Jian Wushuang smiled and said. Universe God Long Xiu's face grew solemn. In Sky Sword Prison, only he would ask for trouble with the others and take their heads. Since when there was someone who would boast shamelessly that they wanted to take his head instead? You're asking for death. Universe God Long Xiu took action directly as he bellowed. He turned into a beast and a terrifying, raging aura spread. Wow. A simple charge and there were 9 shadows that plunged from the void. The 9 shadows looked so surreal. This martial art motion, Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows as a shrill light flashed in his eyes. Behind, Jian Wushuang's soul power instantly locked onto his target, Universe God Long Xiu. He turned instantly and wielded Blood Mountain Sword smoothly. The soaring murderous intention of Universe God Long Xiu led to flowing golden light from his body. Both his hands turned into claws. Wow. In the void, there were suddenly 3 golden claw marks. The 3 claw marks tore the void. Ding, ding, ding. The claw mark collided with Blood Mountain Sword and the impact exploded. Universe God Long Xiu went illusionary and appeared in the 9 shadows again while his real body appeared next to Jian Wushuang. His right index fingers were engulfed with intense golden light. The golden light was like a golden long spear aiming at Jian Wushuang's skull. Jian Wushuang shook and his arms moved in a creepy manner. The sword slashed and Universe God Long Xiu retreated. Universe God Long Xiu harumphed coldly. Suddenly, there were shadows in the surrounding void again. The shadows hemmed Jian Wushuang in and they launched attacks at him simultaneously. Chapter 1460, The Only Weakness. Chapter 1460, The Only Weakness. There were a total of 9 illusionary figures that were hemmed in. They launched an attack simultaneously, waving their claws, landing heavy punches, or giving out brilliant lights from the tip of their fingers. Every single hit was real while Universe God Long Xiu's body moved swiftly among the illusionary figures and appeared in every corner, surrounding Jian Wushuang to perform a vital hit. Even Jian Wushuang found it hard to catch up with Universe God Long Xiu's martial art movements in terms of speed. He deserves to be acknowledged as the one with top martial art movement Sky Sword Prison. That's so terrifying. Jian Wushuang exclaimed, but he was not anxious at all. Although he couldn't follow Universe God Long Xiu's martial art movements, his soul power had locked Universe God Long Xiu long ago. Regardless of how creepy Universe God Long Xiu's martial art movement was, Jian Wushuang could respond in time and also could withstand Universe God Long Xiu's attacks. In the void, Jian Wushuang put his close combat power into full play. In collaboration with his swordsmanship and the power of reincarnation, he fought against Universe God Long Xiu face to face. Although he was playing defense, he never once looked in a fix. Bang! A loud thud and the 9 illusionary figures surrounding Jian Wushuang suddenly dispersed and Universe God Long Xiu's real body appeared somewhere far away. Jian Wushuang, the experts in Sky Sword Prison categorize you as an intermediate standard in the 3rd level. From what I can see, your power could be at the top of the 3rd level and you could totally see through my martial art movement. That's rather impressive. Universe God Long Xiu said. He felt rather complicated at the bottom of his heart. He was fast and his divine body was extremely strong. His martial art movement was widely recognized as the top in Sky Sword Prison. However, his power was actually not too strong. He had only created an ordinary real god unique skill, and he had never once comprehended the power of Heaven Wei. His true power was merely at the intermediate standard of the 3rd level, but because of his terrifying martial art movement, he was listed at the top of the 3rd level. But then, Jian Wushuang saw through his martial art movement, so it was rather difficult for him to put his greatest advantage to full play. He naturally couldn't do anything about Jian Wushuang. It's a pity that I've never once understood the power of Heaven Wei. Otherwise, I would be confident of killing him. Universe God Long Xiu took a glance at Jian Wushuang and immediately shook his head. Jian Wushuang, you're lucky. See you again soon. Then, Universe God Long Xiu moved and he retreated to the back. However, he had just started. Virum. A boundless blazing quicksand erupted. Suddenly, it covered the entire universe and engulfed Universe God Long Xiu within. When the blazing quicksand took effect, Universe God Long Xiu's speed was affected. He started frowning. Jian Wushuang, what are you trying to do? Universe God Long Xiu roared. What am I trying to do? Hehe, I told you earlier. If it's possible, I'd like to take your head down. You thought I was kidding? Jian Wushuang smiled and moved forward to him. Kill me? That's funny. The entire Sky Sword Prison, besides Heartless King, who was one of the 4 kings, who else could kill me? Jian Wushuang, I suggest that you stop wasting time. Universe God Long Xiu sneered at him. Only the Heartless King could kill you? I'm sorry. From today onwards, there will be a second person. This person will be me. Jian Wushuang smirked. Universe God Long Xiu's face grew dim. Universe God Long Xiu, the reason you are afraid of Heartless King is that the Heartless King is good at consciousness attacks, right? Jian Wushuang's laughter continued to spread. He had read information about the 4 kings in Sky Sword Prison. Heartless King was one of them and also the only real god who was good at consciousness attacks in the entire Sky Sword Prison. Universe God Long Xiu was extremely fast and known to be the top in martial art movement. His divine body was extremely strong too. In terms of material attack, he had almost no weaknesses. Among the 4 kings, the other 3 were good at material attacks. Hence, they couldn't kill him. However, Universe God Long Xiu's consciousness wasn't strong. Compared to his divine body, speed, and martial art movement, his consciousness was his only weakness. Universe God Long Xiu, try to take this. Jian Wushuang's voice was heard again. At that very moment, there was a strong crimson light from his eyes. The crimson light was like a crimson sun, extremely harsh to the eyes. 18 Azura Hell descended directly. As Jian Wushuang's soul strength reached the limit of a universe god, the technique was even scarier than before. Although Universe God Long Xiu was back facing Jian Wushuang, as long as he was shined on by the crimson light, he would fall into a phantasmagoria. No! Universe God Long Xiu's expression grew grave. He who was trapped in dreamland immediately went insane and started struggling. Break! Break! Universe God Long Xiu bellowed in madness and his consciousness was quivering. Actually, Universe God Long Xiu's consciousness wasn't weak. Among peak universe gods in the 3rd heaven it could be considered as impressive and he was only 1 step away from the limit of a universe god. However, such a level of consciousness was obviously insufficient before Jian Wushuang. Rumble. Universe God Long Xiu was raging with anger and his heart was extremely cold. Along with the bellow, he finally shook off from 18 Azura Hell. Before he could be surprised, he immediately saw a dark light before him. The dark light was actually a black long spear that gave out mysterious strength. The long spear appeared less than 1 meter away from her. At such a close distance, he wouldn't be able to dodge in time even if his martial art movement was amazing. He could only rely on his strong defense power to endure the black long spear. Clang! The black long spear hit his armor, which was transformed from the robe that he was wearing, and made a metal crashing sound but didn't pierce it. Just as Universe God Long Xiu wanted to let out a breath of relief, he realized the terrifying power from the long spear had pierced through his sea of consciousness. It was an inextinguishable light that Jian Wushuang performed with his all. The inextinguishable light, with the support of the spear, was like a storm. It suddenly tore Universe God Long Xiu's consciousness into pieces. Universe God Long Xiu's consciousness slowly dispersed. Before he died, he seemed to look in disbelief and be unwilling to admit defeat. He never thought that when the other 3 kings in Sky Sword Prison couldn't kill him, he would die at the hands of a universe god. Besides, there was a look of relief in Universe God Long Xiu's eyes. Jian Wushuang stood there in silence as he watched Universe God Long Xiu fall. His eyes were cold. Being imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison, you and I have no choice but to seek our way out with our all. Before I kill you, I want to say that you have killed many other experts, so you can't blame me. Jian Wushuang muttered. Then, he appeared before Universe God Long Xiu's dead body. He took away Universe God Long Xiu's Qiankuan ring and the treasures on him. Then, he immediately took a look inside the Qiankuan ring. Very soon, Jian Wushuang was beaming with joy. Found it. Universe God Long Xiu's secret skill of martial art movement, Flowing Light Phantom. Chapter 1461, Flowing Light Shadow. Chapter 1461, Flowing Light Shadow. Jian Wushuang wandered in Sky Sword Prison for 170 years. Although he exchanged blows with a large number of experts, he was mostly using the experts to train his swordsmanship and close combat power. He had never thought of putting his opponent to death. He thought it wasn't time for him to massacre yet. However, looking at Universe God Long Xiu that day, he took action without hesitation and gave full play to many trump cards to kill Universe God Long Xiu. He only had one goal in his head, which was to get the secret skill in his hands then. Universe God Long Xiu, widely recognized as the first in Sky Sword Prison. His martial art motion was really terrifying. If my soul power couldn't target where his real body was, he could totally use that technique to suppress me and torture me, Jian Wushuang complimented in silence. Universe God Long Xiu, he was only at the standard of the 3rd level, but he was listed at the top of the 3rd level because of his martial art motion. Jian Wushuang, of course, cast greedy eyes over Universe God Long Xiu's martial art motion. Then, he killed Universe God Long Xiu and obtained the secret skill of martial art motion from the latter, as expected. Flowing Light Phantom is a secret skill of martial art motion where one turned into shadow in the void and went shuttling to and fro at terrifying speed. There is a total of 5 stages. The first stage, one could cast 3 shadows at once. The second stage, 9 shadows. The third stage, 18 shadows. The fourth stage, 99 shadows. At the 5th stage, also the highest stage, with full power, one could form up to billions of shadows in the void simultaneously. Looking at the description of Flowing Light Phantom, Jian Wushuang was astonished. He knew the secret skill of martial art motion that Universe God Long Xiu possessed was impressive, but he didn't know it was that powerful. Universe God Long Xiu depended on this secret skill and got recognized as the top martial art motion in Sky Sword Prison. But in actual fact, he only cultivated to the 2nd stage of the secret skill, Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. The 2nd stage of secret skill, which was to cast 9 shadows at once. Previously, when he was fighting a ferocious battle with Universe God Long Xiu, he had only cast 9 shadows. If the 2nd stage of secret skill is so impressive, Just how scary will the following third, fourth, and the highest fifth stage be? Jian Wushuang exclaimed. However, he also knew that although the secret skill was impressive, it wouldn't be easy to cultivate. If it was merely the first and second stage, it would be easy. He only needed constant practice and continuous mastery to become better. However, there was a rather high prerequisite for the third stage onwards. The secret skill of Flowing Light Phantom was a martial art motion that focused on space. From the third stage onwards, it would need to rely on the power of space-time. Hence, to reach the third stage to perform 18 shadows, he had to comprehend one of the Supreme Four Doctrines, the space-time doctrine. It was also the reason why Universe God Long Xiu couldn't reach the third stage of the secret skill. After all, he had never once understood space-time doctrine. The secret skill of martial art doctrine isn't ordinary. If I were to successfully cultivate it, I only need to reach the first or the second stage and it had increased my power tremendously. Jian Wushuang clenched his fists. Then he immediately found a secluded area and started studying the secret skill of Flowing Light Phantom. Jian Wushuang was a person of quick comprehension, and the secret skill of Flowing Light Phantom only had a high prerequisite for the third stage onwards. As for the first and second stage, it was rather easy, especially the first stage. 30 years' time passed in the blink of an eye. In the 30 years, Jian Wushuang reached the first stage of the secret skill of Flowing Light Phantom through continuous study and practice. In an empty void, Jian Wushuang stood there. His figure moved suddenly and the three shadows were casted simultaneously. Swoosh! Jian Wushuang instantly appeared in the void 10 miles away and immediately plunged again. Swoosh! 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 Along with Jian Wushuang's figure moving, the three shadows that he cast continued to plunge as well. The speed was so fast and creepily flexible. No one could tell which was real and which was fake. Soon, Jian Wushuang's figure finally stopped and the three shadows vanished into thin air. This martial art motion is pretty sick. There was a glimpse of light in Jian Wushuang's eyes. Not only did his traveling speed increase terrifyingly and become more flexible after mastering the martial art motion, he also caused his opponent to be deluded by the three shadows. In the massacre, it would put him at advantage. Although it is only the first stage, it has already increased my overall power tremendously, especially in terms of close combat skills. As for the second stage, it took me a total of 30 years to study for the first stage, and the second stage will be extremely difficult. I shouldn't dream of mastering it without a few hundred or a few thousand years. 1,000 years. It isn't short. I can only train while I slowly master it. Jian Wushuang smiled, then he continued his journey of wandering in Sky Sword Prison. Before that, when Jian Wushuang was wandering, he would rely on his soul power to avoid some experts. For example, the real gods on the third level. When Jian Wushuang crossed paths with them, he would normally detour to avoid them. But then, Jian Wushuang was dying to fight against the real gods in the third level. In a barren, dark land, there was a purple palace on the mountainside. Swoosh! A young man in a crimson robe carrying a sword on his back appeared before the purple palace directly. Real God Ping Yu. A bright, clear voice was heard from Jian Wushuang's mouth. It traveled and naturally spread into the purple palace. Very quickly, a middle-aged man walked out from the purple place barefoot. You are Jian Wushuang? The middle-aged man, Real God Peng Yu, looked at Jian Wushuang. You look like you want to fight a battle with me. Jian Wushuang smiled. I have to thank Sky Sword Prison. If I were to be outside, I wouldn't dare to fight against any real god, but now. Real God Peng Yu, you're the first real god that I will fight against since I started cultivating. I'd like to see just how strong a real god expert is. If so, let's fight. Real God Peng Yu didn't waste time and took out a black rod. The two of them started exchanging blows very quickly. The moment they started the fight, Jian Wushuang let his power to full play directly. Along with his close combat skill that he had obtained in the recent years, as well as the secret skill of Flowing Light Phantom, his swordsmanship was performed with his all too. However, he didn't use his soul power still. The battle was extremely ferocious. Under the situation where his soul power was used, although Jian Wushuang was at an advantage with his comprehension of power of reincarnation, his unique skill was weaker after all. Although real God Peng Yu had never once comprehended power of Heaven Wei, he had created multiple real God unique skills. Some were even close to intermediate level of real God unique skill. Relying on his fierce unique skill, real God Peng Yu could still suppress Jian Wushuang, but he couldn't kill him. Chapter 1462, Succeeding in Unique Skill. Chapter 1462, Succeeding in Unique Skill. Real God Peng Yu was the first real god that Jian Wushuang had fought against. Jian Wushuang felt pressured when he was fighting with real God Peng Yu. Although it was said that real gods in the Sky Sword Prison were restrained and their divine power was capped at the level of a peak universe god in the third heaven, the real gods' divine bodies, including their unique skills and secret skills that they possessed, wouldn't be restrained. For instance, as a real god, he had to create a unique skill of real god level. It was obviously much easier compared to a universe god. Even if he was the weakest kind of real god, the real god unique skill that he had created would be very impressive too. Then, Jian Wushuang continued to wander through Sky Sword Prison. He relied on his soul power and found experts who were at the top of the third level and fought against them, including the real gods of the third level. Jian Wushuang didn't intend to let them off the hook. As long as he came across them, he would have a battle with them. Exchanging blows with real gods was very beneficial to Jian Wushuang compared to fighting against the universe gods in the third level. As for the second level, Jian Wushuang had yet to have the guts to challenge the experts of the second level. Their differences were too vast. In all the vigorous battles they fought, Jian Wushuang was constantly improving and perfecting his swordsmanship. He was also perfecting his unique skill. He had already created 2 rank 3 strongest unique skill. Then he naturally wanted to create a real god unique skill, but real god unique skill. Jian Wushuang felt that he was not far from it. Sky Sword Mountain, underneath the 9 sword mountains in the cave dwelling. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain who was sitting there already opened his eyes. His sight looked through the void and he watched everything in Sky Sword Prison. He had been eyeing Sky Sword Prison for a few years. The young man from lineage of Star. He didn't hunt those prisoners who are weak and categorized in the 4th level. On the contrary, he constantly looks for experts at the top of the 3rd level, including real gods, to train his swordsmanship. He treated Sky Sword Prison as his training field. He's quite interesting. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain muttered and quickly closed his eyes. In Sky Sword Prison, the time flew past. To the prisoners in prison, time was cheap. Most of them were imprisoned in the prison for many years and they had lost all concept of time. In a spacious, barren land, Jian Wushuang held his sword with one hand and stood right in the middle. In the surrounding land, there were strokes of sword marks. The surface of the sword marks were extremely smooth and it was obviously due to extremely sharp swordsmanship. V-Room. Boundless sword intention suddenly soared from Jian Wushuang's body as Jian Wushuang's eyes let out terrifying light. He held Blood Mountain sword with both his hands and it shook slightly. There was boundless crimson light on the surface of the blade. The boundless crimson light formed a huge crimson river while Jian Wushuang was the focus of the crimson river. Go! Jian Wushuang released the tension and the force that had accumulated in Blood Mountain sword to the extreme suddenly erupted. Wow! So fast that there was almost crimson lightning in the air. Ridiculously fast. The crimson sword light pierced through the void and left an enormous amount of crimson light. It took very long to disperse. The crimson light hit the ground before them, and the ground instantly had a huge sword mark that covered an expanse of a few hundred miles. The sword mark was as smooth as ice and without any bumpiness. On the surface of the mark, there was a faint crimson light and terrifying sword intention. Done! Jian Wushuang stood in the void and revealed a joyful expression. Ever since he had been imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison, it had been a total of 1,300 years. In the 1300 years, he had been fighting ferocious battles with the prisoners in Sky Sword Prison. In order to train his swordsmanship, he had been trying to figure out ways to create a real god-unique skill. Then, through the battles with the experts, including real gods, and in collaboration of his comprehension of the painting of understanding sword via reincarnation, he had finally created his own real god-unique skill. Jian Wushuang named it Crimson Light. Although it took a total of 1300 years, it was considered a miracle to be able to create this move. Jian Wushuang clenched his fist as he grew hot with emotions. His comprehension power was extremely high. If he were to be a universe god in the third heaven, training in Sky Sword Prison with the aid of the painting of understanding sword via reincarnation, it would have been rather easy to create a real god-unique skill. He wouldn't have wasted so much time. However, he was just a universe god in the second heaven, after all. A universe god in the second heaven who could create a rank 3 strongest unique skill was already considered the monster of monsters. As for a unique skill of the real god level, under normal circumstances, it wouldn't be something a universe god in the second heaven could achieve. But Jian Wushuang had. It was really a miracle. At least Jian Wushuang had yet to hear of any universe gods in the second heaven who had created a real god-unique skill in eternal chaotic world. For instance, Ling Baifei, who was the top among all universe god in the second heaven from lineage of star, had only created a rank 3 strongest unique skill. To be able to create a real god-unique skill is already considered a miracle. However, at my stage as universe god in the second heaven, I'm afraid it will be impossible if I want to create another, stronger unique skill. I can only create a unique skill of the same level at most, Jian Wushuang sighed. As a cultivator, regardless of his level, there would be a limit that each level would reach. It was also inevitable for an inverse cultivator. Jian Wushuang was a universe god in the second heaven. His limitation in unique skill would be creating a real god unique skill. It would be impossible if he wanted to increase its level. Unless he passed through his inverse god's test in the third heaven and became a universe god in the third heaven, then his unique skill could be leveled up further. I've created real god unique skill and my comprehension of reincarnation doctrine has improved tremendously in the 1300 years. The first 3 images in the painting of understanding sword via reincarnation, I already fully comprehended the first and comprehended more than half of the second. As for close body combat, I have also improved a lot. The current me is qualified to squeeze into the second level in terms of my power. Jian Wushuang smiled. Of the 4 levels of experts in Sky Sword Prison, there were 28 in the second level. Among the 28 of them, there were 26 of them who had already comprehended a slight bit of the power of Heaven Wei, while the other 2 were universe gods who were highly talented. But then, Jian Wushuang was confident that he should be able to squeeze into the second level. As for his level among the 28 experts in the second level, he had to fight against the experts in the second level before he could find out. Jian Wushuang quickly moved within Sky Sword Prison and started looking for experts of the second level. Chapter 1463 Invitation. Chapter 1463 Invitation. In the void filled with pungent blood scent, Jian Wushuang appeared on the peak of a mountain. He was overlooking a vast territory before him. The territory was made of billowing hills that formed into a huge mountain range. Here, this should be Darkness Mountain. Darkness Mountain is said to be the territory of one of the 4 kings, Blood Emperor. In Darkness Mountain, there are many experts. There should be some experts on the second level too. I wonder when I'll meet them. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly and then he entered Darkness Mountain to wander around. Sky Sword Prison wasn't that big. It was at most the size of an ordinary realm in the outside world. As the overlord of the prison, the 4 kings had their territories each in Sky Sword Prison and they had many experts under their command. The Darkness Mountain was the territory of one of the 4 kings, Blood Emperor. Jian Wushuang was there to have a chance to fight against experts on the second level. Very soon, Jian Wushuang came across a real god in Darkness Mountain and they started fighting. In the continuous hills, there was a pinnacle that seemed to be tainted with fresh blood. On the peak of the pinnacle, there was a crimson castle. The crimson castle was where the Blood Emperor resided. In a private room, there was a person in a crimson, long robe. He had crimson, long hair, and even his skin was dimly red. He looked just like an elderly with blade-like eyebrows who was showering in crimson sea. The elderly with blade-like eyebrows was Blood Emperor, one of the top experts in Sky Sword Prison. Blood Emperor meditated in seclusion in the secret room all year round. He hardly revealed himself. But then, Blood Emperor's eyes suddenly shot open. Such senses. Who is it? Who came to Darkness Mountain? As Blood Emperor muttered, in the depth of his crimson red eyes, there was light shimmering. His body quivered slightly. Suddenly, Blood Emperor's figure became vague and suddenly appeared in the middle of the hall in the Crimson Castle. Master! A lady in green stood before Blood Emperor politely. Shuang, while I meditated in seclusion, did anything major happen in Sky Sword Prison? Blood Emperor asked coldly. All these years, Sky Sword Prison has been the same as before. Nothing major happened, the lady in green answered. How about the newcomers? I've been meditating in seclusion for 50,000 years. There should be many newcomers imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison, right? Blood Emperor asked. During the 50,000 years when Master was meditating in seclusion, from what I know, there's been a total of 385 newcomers. 90% of these newcomers are dead and only a portion of them survived in Sky Sword Prison, the lady in green reported. Among the newcomers, is there anyone who is wandering in Darkness Mountain? Blood Emperor continued to ask. There's one, the lady in green nodded. His name is Jian Wushuang. He's a universe god. He's in Sky Sword Prison for 1,300 over years. During his time here, he has fought with many experts in Sky Sword Prison and he has improved tremendously. A few days ago, he came to Darkness Mountain and fought with a real god under your command in Darkness Mountain. However, as Jian Wushuang fought with the real god in order to train his swordsmanship but didn't kill anyone, I let him continue to wander in Darkness Mountain as he wished. As expected, there is a newcomer in Darkness Mountain, Jian Wushuang. Blood Emperor smiled and sighed. He then commanded, send a message to the real gods, universe gods in Darkness Mountain. If they see Jian Wushuang, tell them to send a message on my behalf. Tell him that I, Blood Emperor, would like to invite him to pay a visit at the castle. Yes, the lady in green nodded and quickly carried out her task. The entire hall only had Blood Emperor left. Then, Blood Emperor squinted his eyes. Jian Wushuang. I wonder if he's from my tribe. If he is, I'll let him off. But if he isn't... A sharp, shrill shot out from Blood Emperor's eyes. In Darkness Mountain. Bang, bang, bang. A loud thud was heard across the sky. A brawny man in black armor and a black triangle helmet and holding a black long spear had a soaring rage. He continuously stabbed with his long spear and every single stab was like a raging flood dragon. It pierced through the void and aimed at Jian Wushuang's head. On the other hand, Jian Wushuang became 3 shadows and flickered in the void at high speed. He dodged the hit of the brawny man easily, then he swung out Blood Mountain sword at lightning speed too. Every sword light was extremely eye-catching. In terms of power, both of them were obviously not much different. They had been fighting ferociously for an hour in the void, but the match was too close to call. Finally, the two of them calmed down. In Sky Sword Prison, there are only 2 universe gods who are qualified to be on the 2nd level. They are imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison long ago and they experienced countless massacres and training to be where they are today. Then, there's another universe god standing on the 2nd level. Jian Wushuang, you've only been in Sky Sword Prison for 1,300 years and you reached the standard of the 2nd level. That's rather impressive. If you were to continue to improve at such speed, I'm afraid that there might be a chance for us to give birth to the 5th king in Sky Sword Prison in no time. The brawny man in black armor spoke in a loud and bright voice. It reverberated in the universe. The fifth king. Jian Wushuang chuckled. Real God He Xiu must be joking. That I could improve to where I am now as a universe god is already lucky enough. To become the fifth king, there might be a slight possibility after I break through and become real god. The brawny man, real God He Xiu, raised his eyebrows but didn't deny it. Jian Wushuang, I have just received a piece of news from the owner of Darkness Mountain, Blood Emperor. Real God He Xiu said, Blood Emperor wants us to pass you a message on his behalf if we see you. He would like to invite you to his Crimson Castle. Oh! Jian Wushuang was shocked. One of the four kings, Blood Emperor, had invited him over. Real God He Xiu, do you know what is Blood Emperor looking for me for? Jian Wushuang asked. I don't know, Real God He Xiu shook his head. I'm only responsible for passing the message on. As for Real God He Xiu's purpose, I'm not sure. It's up to you whether you go to the Crimson Castle. Real God He Xiu said and disappeared before Jian Wushuang in the next moment. Jian Wushuang stood in the void in confusion. I have never come across Blood Emperor at all. Why would he invite me over out of nowhere? Chapter 1464, Jian Wushuang's Plan. Chapter 1464, Jian Wushuang's Plan. One of the four kings in Sky Sword Prison, Blood Emperor, the top expert on the first level, his comprehension of Heaven Way had reached the first level of Doctrine Palace. Such a top expert wasn't someone Jian Wushuang could match evenly. He naturally stayed at a respectful distance. He had been wandering in Sky Sword Prison for 1,300 years, but he had never come across any one of the four kings. The reason why he would wander in Darkness Mountain was that he wanted to look for a few real gods at the second level to fight to train himself. But Jian Wushuang had never thought that Blood Emperor would invite him personally. What did he want? In Sky Sword Prison, it is very dangerous. People continuously kill in order to leave this place alive. Real gods like Real God He Xiu were nice to me merely because they couldn't kill me. If any universe gods on the fourth or the third level who were weaker were to appear before Real God He Xiu, he would have taken action directly to kill him. Blood Emperor has the ability to kill me. Hence, regardless of what his purpose is, it's impossible that I run to his Crimson Castle. It is no different from asking to die. Jian Wushuang muttered. He had already made up his mind. He didn't plan to bother Blood Emperor at all. He would stay as far away as he could. Unless he was confident with his power and thought he could deal with Blood Emperor frankly, he would then agree to see Blood Emperor. Jian Wushuang continued to wander. In the Crimson Castle that Blood Emperor was in. Master, Real God He Xiu replied. He already passed your message to Jian Wushuang on your behalf. However, Jian Wushuang doesn't look like he intends to make a trip to Crimson Castle. The lady in green stood before Blood Emperor politely. Doesn't intend to make a trip? Blood Emperor raised his blade-like eyebrows. According to the replies of experts in Darkness Mountain, Jian Wushuang doesn't intend to visit Crimson Castle. He was still fighting with the experts in the region to train himself, the lady in green reported. The young man is quite smart. But, if he doesn't come to Crimson Castle, can I take the initiative to find him in person? Blood Emperor smiled coldly. Tell the people in Darkness Mountain to keep an eye on Jian Wushuang and send his current location to me. Yes, the lady in green replied. Then, Blood Emperor's body turned vague and left Crimson Castle. He then plunged towards where Jian Wushuang was. On a barren land. Rumble. A huge axe shadow appeared out of nowhere and pressed over mightily. Jian Wushuang was immediately tough against it with Crimson Light technique. In the end, he was forced to retreat by fierce strength. You live up to your name, Real God Jiufu. You're really impressive. I learned my lesson today. Farewell. Jian Wushuang laughed and then turned to leave. Real God Jiufu didn't intend to stop Jian Wushuang too. He couldn't kill Jian Wushuang after all. In the void, Jian Wushuang plunged as he recalled the battle with Real God Jiufu earlier. The expert standing at the second level was really strong. Although I created a Real God unique skill and I am qualified to step foot on the second level, I belong to the bottom among all experts on the second level. Jian Wushuang muttered. However, with years of fighting experience, I have constantly improved in grasping flowing light phantom. It shouldn't be long until I reach the second stage. By then, I should be able to cast 9 shadows and my power will increase tremendously, especially in terms of speed. Until then, I should be able to start my hunting plan. Jian Wushuang stayed in Sky Sword Prison for 1,300 years. He had had his hunting plan long ago. After all, it was impossible for him to stay in Sky Sword Prison. He had to figure a way out. As he wanted to leave, he had to hunt down the experts. However, once he had revealed his power, especially his soul attack, he might cause a panic attack among experts in Sky Sword Prison. A consciousness attack was too creepy and hard to avoid. An expert who was good at consciousness attacks would be far scarier than other cultivators of another level. Most of the experts in Sky Sword Prison were of the 3rd or the 4th level. Their defense power was extremely strong. However, their defense powers were mostly against physical attacks. Once they come across consciousness attacks, they would be the same as Universe God Long Xiu that Jian Wushuang killed before. Universe God Long Xiu survived under the king's attack, but he was killed by Jian Wushuang. How would other people compare? Hence, if the news about Jian Wushuang was that he was good at consciousness attacks and his consciousness attack was ferocious, and one without the consciousness strength of a real god couldn't resist if it were to spread, the universe gods in Sky Sword Prison would definitely keep their distance from Jian Wushuang. Everyone would keep a respectful distance and run away when they saw him. Who else would be willing to be a whetstone and fight against him? Plus, there might be some universe gods who joined forces to kill him, to remove him as a threat. Just like one of the 4 kings in Sky Sword Prison, Heartless King. She was a real god who was good at consciousness attacks and extremely strong. Back when she first got imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison, she killed many real gods and universe gods with consciousness attacks, but in the end, the experts of Sky Sword Prison noticed her existence and kept their distance. Whenever they noticed that she was nearby, they would run away. Hence, Heartless King could do nothing about it. Over the years, Heartless King was far from achieving the requirement to leave Sky Sword Prison. Heartless King was too powerful, too aloof. But I'm different. I am just a universe god and the experts in Sky Sword Prison wouldn't be bothered with me. Compared to Heartless King who was also good at consciousness attacks like me, I am at a major advantage because my consciousness has already transformed into soul power. Once my soul power is launched, I can easily find experts who are hiding and kill them. Heartless King wouldn't be able to do that, Jian Wushuang sneered. Hence, compared to Heartless King, his advantage over the experts on the 3rd and 4th level was much bigger. But because of that, Jian Wushuang never used his soul power since the beginning. He had been training his swordsmanship and close combat power to increase his overall power. Until he had absolute power to rely on, he would use soul power to conduct the massacres. It was an opportunity that Jian Wushuang tailored when he had entered Sky Sword Prison. Everything was going according to plan. Then he was waiting for his mastery of flowing light phantom to improve to the 2nd stage and cast 9 shadows. Then he would begin the massacre. Chapter 1465, Blood Emperor is here. Chapter 1465, Blood Emperor is here. Jian Wushuang's plan was great. However, something unexpected always happens. Huh? Jian Wushuang suddenly stopped in the void and his face grew solemn. He could clearly feel the figure in a crimson robe with crimson hair within the coverage of his soul power. This look and this aura, it's Blood Emperor. Jian Wushuang immediately realized the person's identity. In the void near Jian Wushuang, Blood Emperor had already noticed Jian Wushuang's existence too. I found you. With a slight smile, Blood Emperor's figure plunged towards Jian Wushuang. Blood Emperor entrusted his people to pass me a message to invite me to his Crimson Castle, but I didn't go. Now, he has taken the initiative to look for me? Jian Wushuang's heart clenched. When he noticed Blood Emperor was plunging towards him, he didn't hesitate but started running away at his top speed. Jian Wushuang, I didn't say that I'm going to kill you. Why are you running away? In the void, Blood Emperor's voice spread as he stopped. Jian Wushuang then stopped running, but he maintained a big distance from Blood Emperor. Although there are many experts in Sky Sword Prison, I reckon there shouldn't be many that wouldn't run away when they see Blood Emperor. I, Jian Wushuang, don't have the guts to deal with Blood Emperor in person, Jian Wushuang said, and his voice spread from afar via divine power into Blood Emperor's ears. I told the others to invite you over on my behalf, but you never came to Crimson Castle as a guest. Naturally, I could only come to find you in person, Blood Emperor smiled faintly. I wonder what Blood Emperor would like me to do for him? Jian Wushuang asked. He was curious too. Why did Blood Emperor look for him? Actually, I looked for you because I needed your help, Blood Emperor said. I have been studying a formation for quite some time. However, the setup of the formation required a gemstone called Tian Sha Gem. I don't have many of them, so I wanted to borrow a few from you. Tian Sha Gem? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. What's a Tian Sha Gem? Where did Blood Emperor hear that I have Tian Sha Gems? You don't have Tian Sha Gems? Blood Emperor frowned. I really don't, and I've never heard of Tian Sha Gems, Jian Wushuang said straightforwardly. You've never even heard of them? Blood Emperor squinted his eyes as he thought to himself, he doesn't even know about the Tian Sha Gems. In other words, it's impossible that he belongs to my tribe even though he carried a treasure of my tribe. Blood Emperor's gaze turned cold and he instantly lifted his head again. He smiled and said, Jian Wushuang, you should have Tian Sha Gem, but you never knew. I have a Tian Sha Gem with me, take a look. Blood Emperor took out a crimson gem from Chen Kuan ring and pretended to show Jian Wushuang as his figure moved towards Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang, hurry up and run. King of Venomous Worm's voice suddenly heard in Jian Wushuang's head. Jian Wushuang's face grew grim and turned around immediately to run without hesitation. Just as he turned around, rumble, there was a soaring murderous intention which erupted from Blood Emperor. Blood Emperor was originally moving closer to him. But then he was traveling at a terrifying speed too, like a crimson, flowing light that flew through the void towards Jian Wushuang. Blood Emperor said he didn't want to kill me? Jian Wushuang's facial expression changed. His soul power could sense that the distance between himself and Blood Emperor was getting smaller at a terrifying speed. At that rate, he reckoned that Blood Emperor would catch up to him in a short time. Secret skill of dragon blood. Jian Wushuang bellowed, and the divine power in his body suddenly became a blazing inferno and churned at a terrifying speed. Burning with the aid of divine power, Jian Wushuang's speed instantly increased by a few hundred times. The distance between Blood Emperor and Jian Wushuang wasn't far, but it instantly widened the gap at extremely terrifying speed. What? Looking at the scene, Blood Emperor's face changed, and he immediately sent a message to all the experts under his command within Darkness Mountain. He wanted them to stop Jian Wushuang from escaping. There were quite a number of experts under Blood Emperor's control, and most of them had gathered at Darkness Mountain. The moment they received his order, they carried it out. However, Blood Emperor belittled Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang's soul power spread. Hence, whenever there were to be any experts that appeared around him, he could notice them at the very moment. Then he would dodge. The experts in Darkness Mountain that wanted to stop him couldn't even see where he was. The chase only continued for 15 minutes and Blood Emperor had to stop. After all, Jian Wushuang was nowhere to be seen. The experts under his control also couldn't see Jian Wushuang anywhere. He escaped. Blood Emperor looked embarrassed and, at the same time, he was shocked. One must know that he was also good at speed. He took action personally, but Jian Wushuang had run away under his watch. Jian Wushuang's skill of escape was extraordinary. Blood Emperor stood in the void and waited for a while. He was waiting for the replies of the experts under his control. Very soon, he came to a conclusion. Although the young man was very fast at running away, he should have yet to get out of Darkness Mountain. If I'm not mistaken, he must have found a place to hide. The place that he is hiding is definitely within 1 billion miles range of this region before me. Blood Emperor was clear that it was impossible for Jian Wushuang to run out from Darkness Mountain in such short period of time. Plus, the experts under his control didn't notice Jian Wushuang's existence. Hence, Jian Wushuang had definitely hidden. There was a flash of a chilly gleam in Blood Emperor's eyes. The next moment, he gave a command to the experts under his control. Everyone, gather at this region, search using consciousness within a 1 billion mile range. We must find Jian Wushuang. The experts under Blood Emperor's control immediately started to search within a 1 billion mile range. A billion-mile range was already extremely vast. One must know that there was a limitation of cultivators' consciousness coverage in Sky Sword Prison. A real god could only cover an expanse of 1,000 miles with his all. Relying on a real god's consciousness to search for a hidden expert within a billion-mile range was really difficult. Most importantly, within the 1 billion-mile range, the underground was not included. Taking the underground into account, the range became even wider. There was less than 100 of them if the experts under Blood Emperor's control were all added up. Even if everyone gathered to search through the 1 billion mile range, the difficulty level of the search was still considered high. Chapter 1466, Living in Seclusion. Chapter 1466, Living in Seclusion. Within the 1 billion mile range that the experts under Blood Emperor's control were searching through vigorously, in the extreme depths of the underground, there was a cave dwelling that had exploded forcefully by divine power. Jian Wushuang was in the cave dwelling. At that very moment, his face was pale and the aura on his body was weak. King of venomous worms, how long until my divine power has recovered to its peak? Jian Wushuang asked. The stronger your power, the more difficult it is to recover your divine power. Plus, your divine power wasn't expended in an ordinary massacre but burned by force while you were running away. When you arrived at this cave dwelling, your divine power was almost empty. Luckily, I was there to recover on behalf. You'll need at least 3 days to recover to your peak, King of Venomous Worms replied. With his divine power, which could be compared favorably with peak in the third heaven, under the situation where it was burned entirely, it was already considered an unbelievable recovery rate for him to recover in just 3 days. It was all because of King of Venomous Worms. If Jian Wushuang were to rely on his own recovery power, it would definitely require much longer time. 3 days? Jian Wushuang nodded in silence as his face grew grave. What's going on with Blood Emperor? I told him I have no Tian Sha gem. I said I have none and he wanted to kill me? Could it be that he was definite that I have a Tian Sha gem? But I don't even know what Tian Sha gems are. Jian Wushuang muttered. It was because you didn't know about Tian Sha gems. That's why Blood Emperor wanted to kill you, King of Venomous Worms said. Why? Jian Wushuang was confused. Jian Wushuang, if I'm not mistaken, Blood Emperor should be someone from Holocaust sect. King of Venomous Worms said. Holocaust sect? Jian Wushuang was shocked. Holocaust sect was one of the most vicious sects in Eternal Chaotic World. They were brutal and merciless. In order to enhance their power, they would even massacre countless living things. Such a sect was hated by every force in Eternal Chaotic World. They were the public enemy of all cultivators. Back in Greenfire World, Jian Wushuang came across an expert from Holocaust sect, Dao Yuanzi, and he witnessed the vicious measure of one from Holocaust sect. In the end, Dao Yuanzi died in his hand and his blood-killing plate armor was from Dao Yuanzi. An expert from Holocaust sect wants to kill me? Would it be because of blood-killing plate armor? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. Should be. King of Venomous Worms nodded. Blood-killing plate armor is a treasure made by Holocaust sect with a vicious method, and experts from Holocaust sect should have some sensory ability towards treasure like this. Plus, the closer the distance, the stronger the senses. Previously, when you were wandering around the other places in Sky Sword Prison, Blood Emperor couldn't sense the existence of blood-killing plate armor as the distance was far. But when you came to Darkness Mountains, the distance became closer and he could sense the aura of blood-killing plate armor. Hence, he aimed for you. However, although he could sense the existence of blood-killing plate armor, he wouldn't be able to gauge if you were from Holocaust sect. After all, people from Holocaust sect must be extremely careful when they wander around eternal chaotic world. They would hide the aura of the secret skill of Holocaust sect that they cultivated entirely. Under a situation where they do not expose the aura actively, no one would know that he was an expert from Holocaust sect. Hence, he was nice to you at the very beginning. King of Venomous Worms paused and continued, as for the reason why he asked for a Tian Sha gem from you, he was probing you. Tian Sha gem was a treasure that Holocaust sect refined forcibly using a unique method. It is extremely precious. Many experts in eternal chaotic world never heard of it. However, an expert from the Holocaust sect would definitely know about it. He used Tian Sha gem to test you, but you don't know anything about it. Hence, he determined that you aren't from Holocaust sect. You obtained blood-killing plate armor by chance. Hence, he wanted to kill you and take away your blood-killing plate armor. Oh, I see. Jian Wushuang nodded in silence, but he found it confusing. Although my blood-killing plate armor is quite powerful, it is just a chaos unique treasure for universe god level. It has yet to reach the real god level. With Blood Emperor's power, he shouldn't be bothered by this kind of treasure. Hee, you got this wrong, King of Venomous Worms scoffed. Blood-killing plate armor is really just a chaos unique treasure for universe god level to you. However, it was different for experts from Holocaust sect. After all, blood-killing plate armor was a unique treasure to Holocaust sect, and ordinary experts in Holocaust sect aren't qualified to have it. Dao Yuanzi, the guy you killed back then, wasn't as powerful as Blood Emperor, but his background should be more impressive compared to Blood Emperor. He didn't get blood-killing plate armor, but Dao Yuanzi got it. To Blood Emperor, he couldn't use blood-killing plate armor of universe god level. But when he's out of here, he could figure out a way to enhance the level of blood-killing plate armor through massacres. Then, blood-killing plate armor would become blood-killing king armor. Blood-killing king armor is a treasure that many experts from Holocaust sect dream of. Blood-killing king armor? Jian Wushuang was dumbfounded. He knew that there was blood-killing armor below blood-killing plate armor, but he didn't know about blood-killing king armor. No wonder Blood Emperor wanted to kill me. He wanted to take my blood-killing plate armor, Jian Wushuang understood. Blood Emperor is from Holocaust sect. If so, what if I expose his identity? Wouldn't he become the public enemy of cultivators in Sky Sword Prison? Jian Wushuang asked. He wouldn't. King of Venomous Worms smiled. If you were to expose his identity in the outside world, he would become a public enemy and be chased after by many experts. However, you're in Sky Sword Prison. In this prison, everyone is a prisoner. Under such conditions, every expert in Sky Sword Prison only wants to survive and shake off their identity as a prisoner one day. As for Blood Emperor being from Holocaust sect, they wouldn't be bothered. True, Jian Wushuang nodded as he agreed with King of Venomous Worms' assumption. Jian Wushuang, I'll pass on a set of hiding methods to you. Study them and master them as soon as possible, King of Venomous Worms suddenly said. Hiding methods? Jian Wushuang stunned. King of Venomous Worms explained, you're eyed by Blood Emperor and you're in big trouble. Although you're out of his sights for now, he definitely knew that you were hiding in this region. He definitely ordered the experts under his control to search for you in this region. If they find you, you'll be doomed. But if you master this method, it won't be that easy for them to find you. You might as well hide here and cultivate. Live in seclusion. Let Blood Emperor and his people continue their search. After some time, when they grow tired of it, you can find an opportunity to leave. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows when he heard that, and he understood. Chapter 1467, Heartless. Chapter 1467, Heartless. The experts under the control of Blood Emperor were searching for his whereabouts madly, and Jian Wushuang naturally could only opt to live in seclusion. Back when I was wandering around with King Luozhen, I learnt many methods. The hiding method that I'm going to teach you, although it isn't considered too high of a level in eternal chaotic world, should be sufficient for you, King of Venomous Worms said. After learning this method, even real God who probes using consciousness in the region wouldn't be able to feel your existence, let alone those ordinary real gods who briefly cover the range with simple consciousnesses. Jian Wushuang nodded and immediately started to cultivate the hiding method that King of Venomous Worms had provided him with. The level of the method wasn't high. Jian Wushuang would be able to master it very soon with his capability. Relying on the method, Jian Wushuang hid his aura entirely. Soon, Jian Wushuang realized that there was consciousness that swept past him. Someone's here and it should be a real god, Jian Wushuang said softly, there an aura in the coverage of his soul power. He was obviously a real god. However, the real god left straight away. As expected, even a real god can't find me, Jian Wushuang smiled and he felt at ease. Then, he took out the painting of understanding sword via reincarnation and started comprehending it and cultivating it in seclusion. The time flew past. In the outside world, the experts under the control of Blood Emperor, including Blood Emperor himself, continued to search through a 1 billion mile range. They even searched deep down in the ground, not letting any corner go unsearched. In a total of a dozen years, the experts almost searched the 1 billion mile range thoroughly. But they didn't find Jian Wushuang at all. Can't find him? Did he get out of this place? In the sky high above, Blood Emperor's face grew awkward but he quickly shook his head. No, it is impossible for him to escape in such short period of time. He is definitely still within the 1 billion mile range but he definitely cultivated some sort of method that concealed his aura. Hence, we can't find him. We are in trouble then. Blood Emperor was confident that Jian Wushuang was hidden in the 1 billion miles range and concealing his aura. If he couldn't even find him with consciousness probing, it would be almost hopeless for him to find Jian Wushuang. Unless Jian Wushuang revealed himself. As long as Jian Wushuang isn't stupid, he will definitely continue to live in seclusion. Until he reappears, the experts who are under my control won't stay guard in the 1 billion mile range to monitor his whereabouts for me, Blood Emperor muttered to himself as he tried to figure out a plan. Then, there's only one way to find the young man. There was a glimpse of light in Blood Emperor's eyes. Then, he took out a communication token. 2 years later, when Jian Wushuang was within the 1 billion mile range, Blood Emperor stood with his hands behind him on the peak of a tall mountain. He looked like he was waiting for something. Soon, in the void before him, a figure in white robe appeared gradually. It was a lady in white robe. The lady looked elegant and poised. She was smiling faintly and her body was enrobed with a warm aura. She gave people a holy and pure feeling. Blood Emperor, long time no see. The holy lady in the white robe walked slowly and appeared before Blood Emperor. She looked at Blood Emperor calmly. Blood Emperor was one of the 4 kings in Sky Sword Prison. All experts in Sky Sword Prison would revere Blood Emperor when they see him. However, the holy lady was rather calm before Blood Emperor. She didn't seem nervous or afraid but greeted him as though she were seeing an old friend. Heartless, Blood Emperor replied with a faint smile. He didn't behave haughtily with her either. Heartless king. One of the 4 kings in Sky Sword Prison, another expert that was alongside Blood Emperor. Also, the only real god in Sky Sword Prison who was good at consciousness attacks. I heard that Fiery King went to Mist Kings. Then he should be at your next. You invited me over today, is it to fight against Fiery King? The holy lady Heartless King asked. Fiery King? That madman. Blood Emperor's face grew grave. Fiery King was like Heartless King and himself, he was also one of the 4 kings in Sky Sword Prison. Theoretically, Fiery King was not on the same level as him. In actual fact, the other 3 kings in Sky Sword Prison were afraid of him. Plus, Fiery King would leave his territory every once in a while to challenge the other 3 kings. As he already looked for Mist King, his next target would be Blood Emperor. Humph, the madman can come as he wishes. It has been more than once or twice anyway, Blood Emperor sneered, then looked at Heartless King. I invited you over today not because of Fiery King but because of another matter. Oh, Tell me, Heartless King sounded gentle. Heartless, I shall not beat around the bush with you. 1,000 years ago, there was a newcomer in Sky Sword Prison named Jian Wushuang. Blood Emperor said. Jian Wushuang and I shared a great resentment. I have to kill him. You have great resentment with a newcomer? What kind of resentment? Heartless King asked. It's something from outside of the prison. It's inconvenient for me to tell you. Regardless, I have to kill Jian Wushuang. Blood Emperor was speaking in a deep voice. Previously, I realized the resentment between him and me. I wanted to kill him on the spot. However, the young man's defense power was rather strong. He made a narrow escape. Oh! Heartless King raised her eyebrows and said, to be able to run away from you, Blood Emperor, just how capable is this Jian Wushuang? The young man is really capable, but while he could run away from me, he will never run out of Darkness Mountain. I am definite that he is still hiding somewhere under my nose. Over the past few years, I commanded the experts under my control to search through the area, to probe every inch with consciousness. However, they still can't find him. I reckon he must have cultivated an impressive hiding method that can conceal his aura from an ordinary real god's consciousness probing. I looked for you. Blood Emperor explained. You want me to look for Jian Wushuang for you? Heartless King's pupil contracted. Yes, Blood Emperor nodded. Among all real gods in Sky Sword Prison, you're definitely on the top of the list in terms of consciousness. The ordinary real gods under my control couldn't find Jian Wushuang's existence, but you could definitely find him if you're willing to help with your attainment in consciousness. Chapter 1468 Expose. Chapter 1468 Expose. Blood Emperor knew clearly just how scared Heartless King was in terms of consciousness. Her consciousness, including her manipulation method of consciousness, wasn't something any ordinary real god could be compared to. That was also the reason he invited Heartless King over. Can you definitely find him? Hee, Blood Emperor, you made it sound so easy. Heartless King shook her head and smiled. A range of 1 billion miles. If I were only to sweep the range with consciousness, it'd be easy. However, Jian Wushuang is obviously good at hiding, so I have to rely on consciousness to probe inch by inch, and you also know that the coverage of consciousness is restrained in Sky Sword Prison. Even if it was me, I'd need more than half a month to probe inch by inch over 100,000-mile range. Now, you're asking about 1 billion miles. How long will it take? Sweeping the range with consciousness and probing inch by inch were totally different. If one were only sweeping the range with consciousness, it'd be easy. If a real god wasn't restrained, their consciousness could easily sweep 100,000 miles. A range of 1 billion miles could be swept in a short time. However, probing inch by inch would require using consciousness to probe every corner within the search range. It would be much more difficult than sweeping the range with consciousness. Naturally, the time required would be much longer. The reason Jian Wushuang said that Heartless King's ability to search for experts was weaker than his was because Jian Wushuang lit up his soul power. He spread his soul power and he could cover each corner of the entire area. Anyone within the range of his soul power would reveal themselves. Although Heartless King's consciousness was strong, she couldn't do that. If some experts were to hide themselves, she had to spend a long time and great effort on probing inch by inch to find them. That was the reason why Heartless King couldn't fulfill the conditions to reach Sky Sword Prison after so many years. In the 1 billion mile range, probing inch by inch was actually very difficult for Heartless King. Blood Emperor, I'm afraid I won't be able to help, Heartless King said coldly. Blood Emperor creased his eyebrows slightly, then said, 2 evil soul pearls, how about that? Evil soul pearls? The Heartless King was surprised, but she immediately turned to look at Blood Emperor. Blood Emperor, you are really people from that force, huh? Regardless of where I'm from, we are now prisoners in Sky Sword Prison. Aren't we? Blood Emperor said. True, Heartless King nodded and smiled. 3 evil soul perks and I'll find Jian Wushuang for you. 3. Blood Emperor found it a pain. Evil Soul Pearl was Holocaust Sect's exclusive treasure. It required extremely great effort and a high price to pay in order to refine one. Evil Soul Pearl was a great help for consciousness. Although Blood Emperor was an expert in Holocaust sect, he didn't have many Evil Soul Pearls. But then, he had to take out 3 pearls at once. Although Evil Soul Pearl is precious, it is nothing compared to blood-killing plate armor. Blood Emperor squinted his eyes and then nodded. 3 Evil Soul Pearl, deal. Then, Blood Emperor passed a Qian Kuan ring to Heartless King. There's 1 Evil Soul Pearl here. The other 2 I'll give you after I kill Jian Wushuang. Sure, Heartless King smiled faintly and examined it. Food. There was a boundless consciousness that spread out from Heartless King and covered every single corner within range. Heartless King had already started probing for Blood Emperor within a 1 billion mile range. However, even for Heartless King, it wasn't easy to find Jian Wushuang within the 1 billion mile range. Even if she didn't rest, it would require a long time. In the blink of an eye, it had been 70 years. If Jian Wushuang were to really be within the 1 billion miles range, we will be able to find him very soon. Heartless King said and then spread her consciousness again. At that very moment, in the underground below Heartless King and Blood Emperor, in the depth of the cave dwelling, Jian Wushuang was seated quietly as he comprehended the painting of Understanding Sword via reincarnation. After so many years, I've comprehended the second painting thoroughly. Next up, the third painting, Jian Wushuang smiled. There was a total of 9 images in the painting of Understanding Sword via reincarnation. Based on Jian Wushuang's comprehension of reincarnation doctrine, he could only comprehend the first 3. He had already comprehended the first 2 among the 3. Jian Wushuang reckoned that if he were to comprehend the third one as well, his comprehension of reincarnation doctrine would be qualified to pass the first level of Doctrine Palace. By then, he didn't have to be afraid of Blood Emperor either. The third is obviously more profound compared to the 2 previous ones, Jian Wushuang thought to himself. But suddenly, there was a boundless consciousness spreading across. Naturally, Jian Wushuang's cave dwelling was within range too. There's experts here to disturb me with consciousness again? It seems like Blood Emperor has yet to give up. Jian Wushuang smoked as he spread his soul power. He wanted to see which experts released consciousness. Just as he looked clearly with his soul power, Jian Wushuang's face grew grave. It's Blood Emperor. And the other person. The person was in a white robe, looking extremely holy. On top of that, her consciousness was extremely shocking. Jian Wushuang immediately recognized the person. It's Heartless King. Blood Emperor invited Heartless King over. Jian Wushuang's face grew grave. The hiding method that King of Venomous Worms passed down to him had no problem if he were to use it to deal with an ordinary real god. Even if the real gods swept their consciousness across him, they would never notice his existence. However, it was Heartless King who came. She was a real god who was good at consciousness attacks. Among real gods in Sky Sword Prison, she was the strongest in terms of consciousness strength. Jian Wushuang wasn't confident in himself that his hiding method was still sufficient before Heartless King. I hope she doesn't notice me. Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows tightly, trying his best to conceal his aura to his maximum. However, he also considered the worst situation and made plans for it. Heartless King was probing inch by inch with her consciousness. Very soon, she found Jian Wushuang in the cave dwelling. Heartless King moved and locked her fierce consciousness power on Jian Wushuang. Found him, Heartless King revealed a smile. However, in the cave dwelling in the depths of the underground, Jian Wushuang's face instantly changed. She found me. Hurry up and run. Without hesitation, Jian Wushuang, who made a plan for the worst conditions, instantly started running away. Then, the Golden Divine Ape took another huge stride forward. After taking a hit of mine, not only did you not die, but your aura didn't even weaken. Jian Wushuang, your power is not too shabby. The blood person that Blood Emperor had transformed into fixed its gaze on Jian Wushuang with its bloodshot eyes. Hee, if Blood Emperor were to let out your fighting power of a true real god, it would be easy peasy to kill me. However, it won't be that easy now. Jian Wushuang sounded extremely arrogant. Although he was only a universe god, his divine body could be compared favorably with a real god's. On top of that, with blood-killing plate armor, even though Blood Emperor's abilities were much stronger than his, it wouldn't be that easy to really kill him. I'd like to see just how long you can endure for. Blood Emperor launched another attack, but he intended to fight Jian Wushuang in close combat. Wow. Blood Emperor was like a crimson ghost that constantly appeared around Jian Wushuang. A fierce, ferocious hit was launched one after another at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang cast 3 shadows simultaneously and gave full play to flowing light phantom technique. At the same time, he erupted the close combat power that he had trained for the past 1,000 years in Sky Sword Prison entirely. Bang, 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 bang. Every ferocious hit and collision made a vigorous roar. After 1,300 years of training, Jian Wushuang's close combat skill was definitely much stronger than before. However, compared to Blood Emperor, who became an overlord in Sky Sword Prison long ago, he was still a notch lower. Most importantly, Blood Emperor's comprehension of Heaven Way was sufficient to pass through the first level of Doctrine Palace. In terms of unique skill, he was also much stronger than Jian Wushuang. That also led to the one-sided situation in the battle. Jian Wushuang was suppressed by Blood Emperor entirely. Luckily, his defense power was extremely strong. After he took a few hits from Blood Emperor, although he was wounded, it wasn't to the state where he would die. Humph, if you were to be outside Sky Sword Prison, you'd be dead long ago. Blood Emperor's gaze grew cold and continuously damaged Jian Wushuang. Although Jian Wushuang tried his best to fight back, his condition went from bad to worse due to the difference in their power. During the vigorous fight, Jian Wushuang intentionally moved towards the weakest point of the consciousness prison. Soon, very soon, there was hope in Jian Wushuang's eyes. He knew clearly that he was merely fighting a losing battle desperately, like a cornered wild beast, as he continued to fight against Blood Emperor. His real intention was there, but his goal was to aim at the weakest point of consciousness prison. Just as Jian Wushuang and Blood Emperor were fighting against each other in the consciousness prison, in a place near to consciousness prison. Swoosh! A figure that was showered in flames appeared in the void. He had just appeared and he could sense the boundless consciousness power nearby. Why would Heartless Consciousness Prison be here? The brawny man with fiery red hair creased his eyebrows and instantly plunged in the direction of the consciousness prison was at. Very quickly, he arrived before the consciousness prison. Then he overlooked the huge consciousness prison before him. Jian Wushuang instantly performed the secret skill of dragon blood, and the divine power in his body started burning in madness. At the same time, he swept out his soul power. Just as Jian Wushuang performed the secret skill of dragon blood and was prepared to make a run. What? Jian Wushuang's face suddenly changed. Within his sensory range of soul power, he noticed an extremely hot aura which was traveling at terrifying speed. The aura appeared in the void right before him. This is... Jian Wushuang lifted his head and saw a cloud of boundless flames sweeping over. The flame was like a cloud of fire that descended from heaven. The cloud of fire landed before Jian Wushuang. Rumble! The boundless flames swept forward crazily in an imposing manner, like breaking dead wood. The surrounding 10,000-mile range was burned by the blazing flame to the point where not even a blade of grass would grow. The terrifying power frightened Jian Wushuang, while Blood Emperor and Heartless King, who were chasing after Jian Wushuang, immediately hauled their steps. The boundless flame slowed down and finally left a small flame burning. Inside the small flame, a brawny figure gradually revealed itself. He had fiery red hair, fiery red eyebrows, and even his beard had a flame-like redness. His body was built and his skin was tan. He was filled with an air of masculinity. However, the brawny man engulfed in the flame was covered in unprecedented rage, and his gaze was furious too. Looking at the visitor, Blood Emperor and Heartless King grew grave. Jian Wushuang stopped in the void afar too. He was shocked to see the sight. Such a terrifying aura. The aura was so savage and so much stronger compared to Blood Emperor and Heartless King. This is Fiery King. Jian Wushuang immediately understood the visitor's identity. In Sky Sword Prison, the 4 kings were publicly recognized as the 4 most powerful experts. However, among the 4 experts, there were differences in their power too. Among them, Fiery King was known publicly and recognized as the strongest. He was stronger than Blood Emperor, Heartless King, and also Mist King. The legend said that Fiery King would visit the other 3 kings every once in a while to fight against them. Every time they fought, although he couldn't kill the other 3 kings, he could torture the other 3 kings. Hence the reason why he was recognized as the number 1 overlord in Sky Sword Prison. The other 3 kings were afraid of Fiery King to a certain extent. Then, Fiery King appeared before Jian Wushuang. Impressive. 4 kings in Sky Sword Prison, and there are 3 here. Plus, Fiery King took the initiative to block Blood Emperor and Heartless King from me. Jian Wushuang's expression grew strange. The brawny man showering in flame, Fiery King, was in boundless anger as he stared at Blood Emperor and Heartless King before him. Blood Emperor, Heartless, the 2 of you, how dare you do anything to my underling? You have guts. A loud roar was heard from Fiery King. His deafening voice shook the surrounding void as though they were shivering in fear. Hearing that, Blood Emperor and Heartless King grew pale while Jian Wushuang looked surprised. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.